Deus Ex Machina was a virtual reality game released 15 years ago. The protagonist fell so deeply in love with this game that he practically dedicated his life to it. 15 years later, Eojin, now just an addict, borrowed money from a loan shark and ended up with a large debt to pay. As a way to repay the debt, he goes to the weapon reinforcement room and upgrades the executioner sword. The user base that still plays DM consists mostly of old players called addicts, but it wasn't always like this. The game was good initially. Within it, the protagonist was once a raid leader, a guild master, and even a castle lord. However, now he is a man in debt. Using the strengthening stone, he advances the executioner sword to level +1 aiming for level +7, and he continues evolving it several times until reaching the 5th grade, and now things start to get real. Praying to all the saints he knows, he manages to upgrade the sword to level +6. Evolving it once more, he reaches the executioner sword +7. No longer afraid of the loan shark, he begins to feel happy again, as his debt will finally be paid off. But what will be left for him after paying the debt? What can he do with empty hands? He is a 35-year-old man who spent 15 years of his life playing a game. He upgrades the sword again, reaching level +8, but his greed doesn't let him stop there. If he manages to upgrade the sword to level +9, he could even buy a good apartment, rekindle old friendships, and live like in the best days of his youth. In a moment of euphoria, thinking he can achieve everything, Eojin upgrades the executioner sword once more. But this time, the upgrade fails, and the executioner sword is destroyed. Covered in tremendous despair, Eojin sinks into his thoughts, the despair of a life thrown away. His body starts to feel heavy and his head starts spinning when suddenly he wakes up in a hospital. Initially, he is confused. The doctor nearby says he signed up for the capsule test group and ended up in the hospital because he had a seizure while playing the game's beta. At first, he still doesn't understand but feels a familiarity with the situation. The pieces start to fit together, and he realizes he has gone back in time. Were all the 15 years of life he had just a dream? He doesn't know. Lying on the floor of his house, he looks at himself in the mirror, seeing a smooth and wrinkle-free face. It was definitely not the face of a guy who ended up with alcohol and cigarettes. He tries to figure out what those 15 years he lived were, whether it was an illusion, a dream, or a nightmare. And there is only one way to know if what he lived was real or not. Deus Ex Machina, the game that turned his life upside down. At the time, there were few chances of failing while playing it. However, a friend ended up asking him to borrow a special item to stream, and she was killed in a hostile guild's hunting field. Because of that, he had to do everything to make up for the loss of the item. He fought in several high-level monster hunting fields and later borrowed money in real life. But the game's monetary values began to decline, and the game that was once easy to make money in became extremely difficult. That was when he took the executioner sword to upgrade and sell it. He can't believe it was a dream and enters Deus Ex Machina. As if he were being summoned to another world, DM is simply beautiful. Furthermore, he realizes that everything he lived through was not a dream. Things are still as he remembers. He enters a dungeon and summons the inventory, taking out the tutorial sword. The first mob he has to face is a bee. With a quick attack, he thinks he easily eliminated it, but it comes back with multiple attacks against him. Remembering where the vital points are, he jumps and lands on it, stabbing the sword right into its neck, killing it instantly. He realizes his body feels much lighter upon rejuvenation. These movements would be impossible with the 35-year-old body ravaged by alcohol and cigarettes. The item he gets from the bee is one of its stingers, which has the ability to paralyze the enemy for 1 second. Using this second chance, different from the first when he started to have fun and achieved nothing, he plans to monopolize everything in this game. Items, hidden things, he will be on top of everything to truly enjoy himself. The place he is now is called the Tutorial Tower. On each floor, the difficulty increases and it is necessary to complete all floors to reach level 10 and enter the main world. However, this tower was supposed to be extremely difficult. Each bee was supposed to take at least 5 minutes to finish, but with the knowledge of weak points and his experience with the game, he completes the tower so quickly that he sets a world record. The system asks him to enter a nickname to mark his record, and the name he chooses is Addict. Going to the 10th floor, the system asks him to choose the difficulty of the monster he wants to fight. He finds it strange because he didn't remember this in his past life, but he recalls that a ranking mentions some hidden secrets in the tutorial, so this might be a privilege given to those who break records. A rank C monster is 10 times stronger than a rank D, while a rank C+ is at least 100 times stronger than a rank D. The addict obviously chooses the strongest monster to fight, aiming for the items it can drop. Rumors spread about the addict, the one who discovered a secret boss in the tutorial. Some even tried to stay near the tutorial village waiting for him to leave the tower to ambush him. Entering the boss room, a large skeletal king wearing iron armor and holding an axe waits to fight him. Eojin dodges all the attacks, as he knows the boss's attack pattern. Like child's play, he defeats the skeleton and is even disappointed with the low level of the monsters. He takes the armor dropped by the boss, which is very good compared to the items people should have at this stage, and starts searching the boss room for something. Using information from his past life, he looks for a secret room with the true boss of the tower. Upon entering the 11th floor, he is almost decapitated as a giant monster starts attacking him in every possible way. Not even Eojin knows how he will defeat this monstrous thing. The demon prison torturer is an S-rank monster. In his past life, several rankers had to team up to defeat it. While dodging all its attacks, Eojin notices restrictions on its body. The prison torturer is not at its full strength. Chains and spikes are holding it back, slowing it down. This monster is certainly more of a giant Easter egg left by the developers than a monster for beginners to kill. Eojin attacks its leg, taking almost nothing of its life, but that is not enough to shake him. Now without cameras or anyone watching, all that remains is time. For days, Eojin fights, dodging all its deadly attacks while trying to deal as much damage as possible. If his stamina runs out, he can just go to the corner of the room or log out of the game, and he spends 3 months to finally finish off the monster. Jumping from level 10 to 32, he is now probably the top 1 in levels, as the highest level players should be around 25 or 26. However, what truly matters in the game are the items, and in his hand, he holds an S-rank item. The weapon that was initially possessed by the God of Panic, the top 1 of the dark ranking, is now in his hand. In terms of damage, it is a rather weak weapon, but thanks to its characteristic, it becomes one of the most broken weapons in the game. The system notifies him that he is out of the tutorial, and asks him to choose a side. 2 options appear, dragons and demons, but Eojin chooses either. In this game, the draconian and demonic races fight each other, and choosing one side means you can only attack the other side. He doesn't want his fun to be cut in half. In the beginner's village, people are scared, looking at Eojin. After selling all his items, he is completely naked and doesn't seem embarrassed to walk around like that. He sold the items because the monsters he will face now will be hit kills if they touch him even with armor, so he doesn't need to use them. While he is reflective, thinking about where to go, a group of players approach him. These guys saw him auctioning the armor earlier and ask where he got it. The protagonist, feeling a strange familiarity with them, realizes they are addicts like him. These guys continue to threaten him, saying they won't let him hunt if he doesn't say where he got the item. Using a very poor acting performance, he pretends he is going to give the items to them. Leading them to an isolated corner, the addict shows his true side. He already knows this type of player very well. Players who sit in the beginner zone, receiving the minimum XP to maintain level 15 and stealing items from newcomers. The group tries to attack him, but within seconds they are easily defeated. Seeing what items they have, the protagonist finds a slime essence, made after collecting the core of 100 slimes. Luckily, it is exactly the item he needs to complete his next dungeon. At the same time, the item he put up for auction is sold for 85 million gold, leaving the addict impressed. The interpolar armor is a good item, but it's not worth that price. The person who bought it must really want to be in the game's lead. In the past, all the real money he earned was put into the game, but now it will be the opposite. Exploring the forest with his new boots, the protagonist is going to find the item that belonged to a top-ranking archer. In the past, archers were a neglected profession. Even if the arrows were strong, the armors always managed to block them. However, with a special item, this archer could hunt without using arrows and still do PKs. The protagonist is not an archer, but he needs mobility as good as an archer's. While exploring the cave, he encounters a lone Oni, and when he thinks about facing it, a herd appears behind it as if they were coming out of the ground. He slips through them, making small cuts with his blade. Then he escapes into a door, being surprised by various traps, one of which falls to the ground and breaks, making him fall to the boss. The dungeon boss is a red Oni, with the ability to create earthquakes just by stomping the ground. The addict dodges the earthquake, saying that if he had been hit, he would have lost 50% of his life. The battle between the two is about to begin, but the group of Onis arrives at the scene. Surrounded on all sides, this seems like the end for Eojin. However, the previously hit Onis start dying one by one, thanks to his knife's effect, slow death. It deals permanent and continuous damage, taking 0.01% of the target's life every second. One by one, they start dying until only the red Oni is left. It inflates its belly, releasing a burst of fire from its mouth. Eojin dodges, and the Oni prepares another earthquake. Eojin jumps at the right moment, and manages to dodge the attack again. Thanks to the boots that provide stability, he takes no damage. He makes a small cut on the Oni's leg, and 3 hours later, he manages to kill it. Now that one is down, There are 2 more C-rank monsters left in the beginner area. In the forest, he is pursued by the wet spider, almost getting hit by one of its legs. He keeps fleeing from it and lures it to a gorge, making it get attacked by another C+ rank monster. While the spider is a monster that doesn't shy away from fights, the royal snake is an extremely territorial monster. The mere encounter of these 2 beasts is enough to spark a fight that would astonish most players. And calmly, the addict manages to eliminate 2 monsters at once. He puts the 2 C+ rank items he obtained up for auction, making people fight to buy them. Eojin, now with piles of money in his room, reflects that he was also like this, living off the crumbs left by professionals, but this time it will be different. He will be one of the game's pioneers. After a while, he receives a call from his uncle, who treats him in the worst possible way. After his parents died, it was his jerk uncle who took him in, and all he did was take his father's inheritance and yell at Eojin. Now that there is nothing more to do in the initial area, he plans to attack a desert dungeon. The dungeon normally couldn't be accessed by a solo player, but he knows a secret method to enter. Sacrificing the llama, the ground starts to tremble, and a giant monster emerges from the earth. The sandworm starts chasing the protagonist, who runs towards the pyramid, dodging its attack at the last second. The attack is so powerful that it creates a hole in the pyramid, allowing him to enter the dungeon secretly. He heads towards the boss room but encounters 2 players leaving the room, and he recognizes them instantly. A tremendous rage fills his body as he sees Yodahi and her brother. Because of these 2, his past life was a living hell, but this time he will put his feelings aside and focus on what truly matters: payback. They enter the boss hall, which awakens upon sensing the male presence in the room. When the siblings look back, searching for the protagonist, he has disappeared, leaving them alone to fight the boss. As they try to escape the room, they find the doorknob broken, trapping them inside. With no other option but to fight the boss, they prepare themselves. The boss hits them with several attacks, which are blocked by the brother's shield, and Dahi takes the opportunity to strike back. Coordinating their efforts, they manage to lower the boss's HP significantly. The protagonist, hidden and watching everything, prepares for his entry. The fight against the boss continues. It becomes much faster and stronger over time, even managing to break the shield with a single attack. Dahi lands a blow that isn't enough to kill it, and just as she is about to be hit, the protagonist arrives to finish off the boss. The siblings are furious that he landed the final hit. He nonchalantly says that thanks to him, they managed to kill the boss. The message of the boss's defeat appears along with another message stating that the group meets the requirements for the secret mission. Dahi feels a severe headache and hears a voice asking to take over her body. She is possessed by the dungeon boss, the condition for entering the dungeon being at least 2 people, one of whom must be a woman. Queen Rhodesia is reborn and kills the brother, but still needs to finish off one more person. The addict, who had been hiding until then, steps out to face her. He dodges all her attacks, getting close enough to cut her as if he had done this raid millions of times, humiliating the boss. She uses her final attack, a rain of lightning bolts, but he dodges them effortlessly, like a dance. Approaching her and landing multiple attacks, her HP drops significantly. She begs for mercy, claiming her body is no longer possessed, but the protagonist, indifferent, kills her regardless. He completes the dungeon, earning the bronze sword of an ancient civilization. Besides collecting the items dropped by the boss, he also gathers the items that fell from the players. Dahi's ghost tries to stop him from taking her items, but he ignores her and continues collecting. She asks who he is, and answering both her and the system, he says, addict. Upon exiting the game, Eojin, who recorded the entire raid, decides to edit it, censoring his face, and post it on YouTube. It works so well that during the night, he receives a flood of notifications. At the siblings' house, because of the penalty preventing them from entering the game for a while, they are deeply irritated with the addict. Dahi's face, now all over the internet, ruins her plan of appearing as a mysterious and delicate girl, even earning her the title of beautiful boss. She plans to leverage the fame to make money. We also learn that they are already involved in loan sharking, and people who can't pay are put into DM capsules to earn money in the game. A professional group of players watches the video of the addict's B+ rank raid and is astonished by his performance. The team leader asks to contact the addict, though he is also worried that the addict is already being bombarded with other offers. They send the message anyway, which is promptly answered, but without specifying what he will do. Meanwhile, one of the professional players closely examines the footage, seeing that the addict is several steps ahead of him. Returning to the game, the addict finds himself on the floating island, which looks like a sewer with various worms crawling around. The video he posted not only received many views but also ended up trending on the main page. Perhaps the protagonist overestimated the current rankers. To someone who has played for 15 years, what he did was simple. He defeats the monsters until he reaches a stone statue that communicates with him. It makes a request, but he refuses. It insists, but he continues to refuse. Until a secret mission is discovered, he wants the addict to kill the person who cursed him under those conditions, the weeping Galatea. He found this out thanks to a ranker called God of Combat, who mentioned it in an interview. Heading to the mission location, his boat is attacked by Dahi, but she is not alone. She has managed to gather a small group of people who hate the addict, planning to attack him all together. The addict realizes they are not there just to vent their frustration by killing him. When everyone attacks simultaneously, he disappears, leaving only his cape behind. Atop a beam like a god, he invites those people to join the secret raid. The group is hesitant, but he convinces them by saying he has secret information about dungeons, quests, and that they could become pioneers of DM. The group is formed by the Lone Shark siblings, the 3 beautiful musketeers, and some NPCs. Among them, the standout is Ma Taekong, the future god of combat. As a big fan, he is excited to raid with him but questions why he wants to kill him. In a jungle, they kill some insects while searching for the secret dungeon. The addict is questioned by Dahi about how he knows so much about the game. They arrive at what looks like a circus in the middle of the forest. Upon entering, they are attacked by puppet monsters and clowns. He uses his boots, now enhanced with the red Oni's foot leather, capable of causing large-scale earthquakes. Clown and puppet-type monsters take twice as much damage from earthquakes, and because they have the minion attribute, the damage is quadrupled when the stage is destroyed. In other words, a slap from him deals 4 times the damage. He continues to massacre the monsters practically alone, leaving both the god of combat and one of the musketeer sisters impressed with his skills. The NPCs, who did nothing, start complaining that the protagonist is killing the monsters alone to keep the items. Since they are a group, they should share the rewards, making everyone in the group impressed by their cheek. The protagonist, with all his inner kindness, automatically agrees with them, leaving Dahi suspicious of his actions. They enter a hall where a statue covers its face with its hands in the middle. When no one is looking at it, a message saying the boss has appeared pops up on the screen, along with the elimination of one person from the group. People are frightened, looking at the body, trying to understand what happened. 2 more people are instantly killed. Dahi notices blood on the statue's hands and realizes it is the boss of the hall, the weeping Galatea. This boss is inspired by the British series Doctor Who, moving only when no one is looking at it. When someone looks at it, it turns to stone, impossible to kill. The sisters launch a barrage of attacks, but nothing happens to the stone. Everyone is desperate, wondering how they will kill it, and turn to the addict. The addict says there are 2 ways to finish that dungeon. The first is by dying, and the second is by defeating the boss. He says he can defeat the boss alone and brought them there only because they are useful, charging them 100 million gold. Dahi's brother attacks him. Pretending to be scared, he closes his eyes, making Galatea kill him instantly. They are hesitant to give the addict the money, fearing he will disappear. As a solution, he tells them to deposit the money into the DM system, as it acts like a bank where no one can touch the money until the mission is completed. Additionally, he says they can take the reward that Galatea drops. Since she is a B+ rank monster, the drop will be B+ rank. This grabs their attention, as it will put them far ahead of where they are now. Such a tempting offer makes them accept the proposal. Everyone sends 100 million gold, making the addict very happy since the initial goal was 100 million in total. Impressed by their determination to become pioneers, he sets off to face Galatea. In his past life, the mission to defeat Galatea took 5 years, long considered one of the hardest bosses. The addict tells everyone to close their eyes. Using a simple shield reflection, he can see Galatea's attacks, skillfully dodging and even managing to hit her. Galatea, now having removed her hands from her face, shows a terrifying form. Before she can land an attack, he tells everyone to open their eyes. Due to her nature, every time she stops, her attack pattern resets. He tells everyone to close their eyes again. The people listening to the battle are nervous and curious about what is happening. The fierce battle between the 2 continues. Dahi considers whether to look at her and hinder the addict, but before she can make any move, the raid completion notification appears. The boss in front of them starts to crumble, and the addict raises his hand victoriously. The money drops into the account, and Dahi finds it strange that no reward was given. She immediately recalls the incident with the queen. Notifications say that the body sealed inside the statue has just awakened, and the real boss emerges. With a black flame covering its body, people look at her again, hoping this will stop her movements. However, the opposite happens. They are petrified, except for the addict, who closed his eyes. Knowing Medusa's movement pattern, he uses his shield to fight her, but he is attacked by a team member. The god of combat, who realized what was happening and didn't look at Medusa, remains intact and attacks him. While everyone else is either greedy, amazed, or scared of the new boss, he is the only one analyzing the addict closely. This makes him a bit happy, if not for the barrage of attacks he's about to face. The god of combat advances on the addict again, who uses his shield to block the blows, but the already damaged shield forces him to retreat. The god of combat confirms his suspicions. The addict was weak against other players. The addict assesses his equipment and realizes it's the same gear he used in the past. He knows this because he was a huge fan of the god of combat, watching his fights and mimicking his martial style. As if predicting all his moves, with a disturbing smile on his face, he manages to stab him with his knife. But before falling, the king of combat strikes his bronze shield, finally breaking it. With determination to be the first to finish this raid, the only thing the addict can do is think of another plan to defeat Medusa. He starts a live stream and begins narrating his situation like a YouTube tutorial. After defeating the weeping Galatea, he will face Medusa. With his eyes closed, he memorizes her location to attack her. After dealing enough damage, she summons Jormungand. It may seem desperate due to its size, but its attack pattern is quite simple: a tail whip, a body sweep, and then a headbutt. To defeat it, you must be patient and use continuous attacks, then just go for the boss. Due to her low HP, she will try to use her passive ability, Mana Burn. Originally, he would use the shield, but since it's broken, he improvises with the bronze sword he earned in his previous raid. The nameless queen who dropped this item holds a huge grudge against the descendants of dragons and demons. This dagger, with its counterattack attribute, deals 100 times the damage to dragon-type monsters. Medusa, theoretically a serpent, is considered a descendant of dragons. Moreover, Medusa is a dark type, which is weak to bronze, so this attack will deal 4 times the damage. With just one hit, the attack that was initially 80 rises to approximately 32,000. Almost being petrified, the addict manages to land a blow that decapitates Medusa, completing the raid and gracefully ending the live explanation. He earns a ring capable of summoning Jormungand and a piece of the weeping Galatea. He sits on the ground facing Medusa's head, and after nearly 3 hours, he begins to converse with the severed head. Still with her eyes closed, she responds to the addict. Originally, she was a human who fell in love with a black dragon and had a child. This child, now alone, was sealed by its father. Her request is to kill the child and send it to the underworld along with her. In her final moments, the addict says he wouldn't kill a child, and with a gentle smile, she dies. The continuation of the secret quest is discovered. This quest that began with the bronze golem, extending to the nameless queen, the weeping Galatea, and finally Medusa. The rank of the monsters he must face increases gradually, and we can imagine that the last monster he will fight will be an S rank. Accepting the quest, he receives a key. He doesn't know what it's for, and the description isn't very detailed either. After a long night's sleep and being awakened by a cockroach staring at him, he decides it might be better to move soon. After receiving his YouTube payment, he ends up talking to some employees of streaming companies. It seems he's becoming so famous that they want to sign partnership contracts with him, but in most cases, these contracts are scams. After choosing a house, Eojin walks calmly down the street when a monitor falls right in front of him. He thinks about complaining, then a scream comes from the window, so terrifying that he decides to keep quiet and continue on his way. The person who threw the monitor was Dahi, who is out of control with rage because he gained views at her expense. Even though the video was sponsored, it is still at the top of the trending category, and even people who have no connection to DM are watching the video. Their employee says he became a fan of Dahi and even joined her guild. Asking her brother, she finds out that her guild now has more than 300 members, giving her hope of getting revenge on the addict. He is exploring a dungeon and encounters all the monsters already dead, finding only a blue Oni with several arrows stuck in its body. The Oni tries to use an earthquake, but the addict, who also has this ability, cancels the effect, making a small cut on its body right after. 3 hours later, the Oni dies, and he searches for the person responsible for clearing that dungeon. Entering a door, he is hit by an explosion, finding an A-rank monster fighting an archer. Watching the combat, the addict remembers who this archer is, Drake Kaith. Top-ranking professionals are listed in many other lists besides the official ones, and Drake has maintained the top spot in PK rankings and was even considered the world's #1. He became very popular, earning the title 1 in 7 billion, but suddenly disappeared from the game. Drake is cornered, but as if he had planned this, he dodges the Gorgon's attack, making it fall into a pit with blades on the floor. The addict is impressed by his ability to set such a trap in such a short time, showing why he was considered the top one. He attacks the Gorgon's eye, finishing it off. But in a moment of carelessness, the Gorgon's snake launches a surprise attack that is easily stopped by Jormungand. The addict approaches, and Drake asks if the snake is his summon and thanks him for saving him. He says he will repay the addict's help doubly, which excites the addict since the top 1 PK promised to save his life twice. He says he will need to use one of those times right now. In this dungeon, there is a secret passage called the Den of the Depraved. Drake doesn't understand much since this was supposed to be the last floor, but the addict leads him to some ruins forming a sort of altar, finding a lock that perfectly fits the key he got from defeating Medusa, unlocking a secret passage leading to the hidden floor. The monster there is Medusa's son, the basilisk. Seeing the basilisk atop the hole, Drake shoots some arrows, but the damage is reflected back at him. The depraved nature of the basilisk allows it to reflect 90% of the damage it takes. The basilisk, now detecting them, releases a strong poison beam upwards. Even though they manage to dodge it, they still take damage just from exposure to the poison. While Drake is hesitant to fight, the addict jumps into the basilisk's hole and summons Jormungand, using it like a surfboard. Jormungand's poison resistance goes beyond imagination, easily dodging its poison beams. The problem now is penetrating its thick armor. The addict is almost hit by an attack but is saved by Drake. He uses his dagger to make a small cut on the basilisk, activating continuous damage. Drake says that even using Jormungand, they won't last long due to poison exposure, and the addict agrees, saying they should get out. While the basilisk releases a barrage of attacks on them, Drake thinks they will have to leave the dungeon and come back later, but the addict is determined to kill the basilisk. It takes about 2.5 hours to reach the first floor, and after approximately 3 hours of continuous damage from his blade, the basilisk dies. Like a bet in a deadly game, they begin ascending the dungeon floors. The protagonist, who can distinguish which attack the basilisk will use just by the sound it emits, helps them dodge all the attacks. Reaching the first floor of the dungeon, the addict looks for something. He crosses 2 pillars, and when the basilisk gets close enough, a blue Oni is summoned. The Oni, an extremely territorial monster, charges at the basilisk like a Pokemon summoned by its master. The fusion of an item is completed at that moment, and the Oni attacks the basilisk. However, against its overwhelming strength, the Oni is killed instantly, buying only a few seconds of advantage for the protagonist. They manage to escape a bit further but are cornered by the basilisk. Drake loses hope, saying this is as far as they can go. The addict, who had a trick up his sleeve, equips a secret item using both the red and blue Onis, boots capable of using the earthquake attribute with much more power than his old ones. He uses the earthquake on the floor of the room, which breaks, dropping the basilisk to the floor below. The Den of the Depraved is originally a deep pit with a lot of space between each floor. The basilisk, falling to the lower floor, takes enough damage to break the next floor, falling all the way to the bottom of the dungeon. With this and the damage from his blade, it should be enough to kill it, but for precaution, he still uses Jormungand to throw rocks at the basilisk. Thus, he manages to complete the secret mission, earning armor, one of the 3 items he plans to acquire. Talking with Drake, he learns that an important guild has placed a bounty on his head. The addict gets irritated, saying the accusations against him are false. So, he devises a plan to eliminate those who want to kill him. In a distant desert, groups of players gather to hunt the addict. They fight among themselves but are stopped by Dahi, who reminds them of their objective. Like an idol convincing her fans to do what she wants, she incites hatred against the addict. Almost 500 people have gathered for this hunt, many of them because a Chinese leader also placed a bounty on the addict's head. They managed to find the addict's location thanks to Drake, who followed him and gathered information. Drake, already famous for PK, makes Dahi confident that this time they will catch the addict. The next day, they are all prepared. When the addict logs into the game, a rain of attacks is launched at him. However, when the smoke dissipates, they only see a giant poop that quickly disappears, leaving only a llama. The blood of the llama attracts a desert monster that causes an earthquake, terrifying everyone. The addict finally appears, saying this is his gift for them, and with just one sweep, the monster takes out several players. The previous day, Drake told him that he had collected all the bounties and spread the word that he would appear at the designated location. He is somewhat apprehensive about how the addict will defeat so many people, especially since the number increased due to the high bounty placed by the Chinese leader. The leader's name is Youngshi. The addict says that Young means him, and the other means not saying, so if asked his name, he would say, not saying. Using this pun, the addict intentionally attracted as many players as possible, who are now being massacred by the sandworm. While the players are in total panic, Dahi leads them, giving battle orders to everyone, and the raid to hunt an A+ rank monster begins. Bombarded with attacks, the creature starts to retreat. Now that news of the A+ rank monster has spread, more people head to the area. However, they did not count on Drake, who from a long distance, shoots arrows, massacring the players in the group. The addict uses the situation to strike the sandworm with his dagger, waiting until the monster is finally killed. After some time, when the group manages to defeat it, the addict appears to steal the sandworm's reward. Dahi attacks him with her sword, but the black skin now covering his body reflects all the damage back to her. Now that all contributors to the Sandworm raid are dead, he becomes the sole contributor, earning a cape made from its skin. The cape has the tenacious ability, acting as a lifesaver. If at full HP and taking damage over 10,000, instead of dying, he survives with 1 HP. A group of players, outraged that he stole the items, tries to end him. However, using the cape, which has a dirty play attribute, he camouflages himself in the desert to escape. At school, Ma Taekang, who is still a student, notices that the addict is becoming very famous. While thinking about how to earn money to help his sister, he finds a flyer for an amateur DM championship with a reward of 1 billion won. Eojin, who went to visit his family's house, observes them discussing how they will divide the inheritance of the deceased father. His uncle, during his life, always pressured him to go to college and get a job, comparing him to his supposedly successful cousins. He calls Eojin a bum who only knows how to play games, but this doesn't affect him, probably because he has heard it so much in his past life. The family members are trying to discuss how to divide the inheritance, and are a bit confused by the complicated paperwork. Eojin, as if he mastered the subject, explains step by step what they need to do to solve the problem, leaving everyone impressed, except for his uncle, who continues to just shout at him. In reality, he learned all this in his past life while his uncle shouted at him. Soon after, his cousins tried to irritate him, saying he wouldn't be able to get into college and would have no future. This family sees studying in college as the only way to be successful in life, putting pressure on the children from a very young age. However, the result of this, in a few years, is the older brother becoming an alcoholic and another failing in his business, using up all the uncle's money. But he didn't come back to this life to let the same things happen again. They hear a noise outside, and when they go to look, there's a truck that Eojin had called. From it comes a Porsche, leaving everyone impressed. He says he has some matters to attend to and leaves. The children, who were scared using Eojin as an example, now see him as a role model. Inside the car, he says that it is finally starting. The clandestine event Toto League is about to begin. Introducing the fighters, we see a skinny man with large armor on his body as his opponent, using a false name, Ma Taekang, the god of combat. The first fight begins, Mateos vs PK Joe. The audience watches attentively, using temporary avatars to hide their identities. PK Joe makes the first move, charging at Mateos. Unable to react, he is stopped with a punch. Confused, he continues his attacks without result. The god of combat punches his ribs, and then hooks his chin. A few minutes after the fight starts, Taekang emerges victorious. The audience, who preferred to bet on the Japanese, is extremely irritated by the loss of money. The next fight begins, but the opponent facing the god of combat is the addict, or rather, a fake addict. From his height, the god of combat can tell this is not the real addict, charging at him and landing several blows. Wearing equipment that doesn't match his physique, the fight becomes one-sided, and the god of combat beats the fake addict. He charges his gloves but feels annoyed hearing the judge belittling the addict, landing a punch so strong that it destroys his mask. Now with his identity revealed, the man posing as the addict is the top 3 in the Chinese ranking, Koz. No longer needing to hide, Koz uses his true equipment. The god of combat charges at him, landing several blows on his body but to no avail. As if fighting a completely different enemy, he struggles to battle against him. Trying to gain distance, he continues being attacked from all sides. With no choice and his HP almost 0, the god of combat gives up the fight. Leaving the arena, reflecting on his defeat, a mysterious man in red armor catches his attention. He asks why he went easy on his opponent, and before leaving, tells him to bet everything on him. The confidence he exudes makes Taekang realize that the man is the addict. His fight begins, using the name Madongwang. The addict prepares an attack that makes the ground tremble. In an instant, he appears in front of Koz, with a completely different voice, holding his head. His videos have generated a lot of money, but even with sponsorships and revenue, it's far from enough. He finds the flyer for the Toto League, the first illegal private tournament. Remembering the rankers of that time, knowing their skills and weaknesses, he is almost certain he can win. With his knowledge, he predicts the outcomes of the battles, always betting on the winner, and his wealth has grown enormously in a short time. Returning to the fight, Madongwang is having a one-sided victory over Koz. Now using gauntlets that cause earthquakes, he repeatedly attacks Koz. His opponent thinks about closing the distance, but in his other hand, he uses a vortex ability, causing his opponent to fall. Madongwang. This was not a name he created randomly. While thinking of a style to copy, he remembers the man who appeared in the league as a symbol of the meta. Madongwang was one of the top rankers in Korea, but after his debut, he was completely forgotten due to the match-fixing scandal, which caused the professional league significant losses. Since his actions will greatly impact the league and the fans anyway, the addict intends to use them now to become a symbol for professional players. Kobe, who was so confident, begins to feel genuine fear of Madong being finished off in just a few moments. The judges and the audience are astonished by his overwhelming power. A new figure has just made his debut in the league. A few days later, for the first time, we see the addict desperately facing a monster, as if he is in a hopeless situation. A week earlier, in a cafe in the Gangnam district, a young woman with pink hair waits for someone. This girl is the program director of the LGB broadcast station. She managed to contact the addict and invited him for a conversation. He arrives still hiding his face, wearing a mask, glasses, and a cap. She stares at him for a while, as it's the first time she sees him dressed like this. The girl, who for now seems just a novice in the TV program, will transform into the director of one of the largest virtual broadcast stations. If he can make a deal with her, it will benefit him greatly in the near future. He will do a broadcast for their TV channel, challenging the Tomb of the Brave. This dungeon is a 108-floor tower, with each floor becoming more difficult. Besides being the most famous content of DM, it has turned into fierce competition among world rankers. For now, the first place in the solo ranking is held by France, the United States, and Korea, reaching only up to the 45th floor. If the broadcast goes well, LGB has a great chance to go viral. In the game, he is filmed by Yang in the form of a light ghost. The Tomb of the Brave is really a tough place to complete, its final floor being ranked S+. Even in 15 years, it hasn't been fully completed. But this time, he's not there to break ranks. He's there to find clues to the last of the 3 artifacts he's looking for. Inside the tower, the addict fights against a worthy opponent, so strong that it makes him want to give up. Only his motivation to surpass the rankers keeps him standing. After a few hours of fighting, he finally defeats the Queen of Slimes, the boss of the first floor. When asked about facing just a slime, he says the Queen of Slimes is one of the bosses with the longest reach in DM, and there's no strategy to dodge her attack. Now that the relatively complicated monster has been defeated, the rest will be easier. He climbs up to the 46th floor of the Tomb of the Brave at a frightening pace, facing Kaidamaru. He uses poison from his blood as a trap to injure the monster. One of Kaidamaru's attributes is stealth, and his habit of hanging upside down like a bat allows him to kill most players who don't expect the attack. However, the protagonist can detect him by his characteristic smell, dodging his attack. He launches a fireball at the addict, who shields himself using Jormungand. Using his speed, he finishes the boss in a few minutes. Yang is excited by the addict's feats, breaking the world record. The item that drops from Kaidamaru is in essence used to fuse with the Oni's earthquake boots. By breaking the world record and teaching the audience how to fuse essences, it's guaranteed that the stream's viewership will be high. But this isn't the end. Reaching the 47th floor, the boss waiting for him is a succubus. The moment he encounters her, the addict feels fear. She launches a barrage of blows in his direction, which he barely manages to dodge. One of the succubus's abilities is Make Your Choice, which determines whether her attack type will be physical or magical. Unfortunately, this succubus is of the physical type. If she were magical, he could use Jormungand, which has magic resistance. But now facing her one-on-one, he doesn't know how long he will last. Betting everything, he exposes his chest for her to strike, activating his ability and reflecting the attack back to her, but it doesn't work. As a very strong and very fast monster, her defense is low, so the addict begins to slow her down. Throwing a suggestive slime at her, the succubus attacks again but with more rage. He continues to dodge the attacks until the item he was preparing finishes fusing. The leather boots, now much stronger, can use the attribute Blazing Steps. This ability sets the ground on fire wherever he steps, turning the entire area around him into lava, concentrating all this immense attack solely on the succubus. It's truly an incredible item that Ma Dongwen used in the past. After completing the 47th floor, he decides to stop there. Cut to Dahi, who has started doing live streams in a very forced manner since, thanks to her last encounter, she lost all her money. Now, she has to do these forced live streams to try to earn something. The only thing she can do to vent her anger is report the addict's videos and write spam. She lies down to watch her favorite TV show, The Last Days, but is surprised by the news that the addict is part of the show, making her furious again. Back at the cafe where they initially met, she mentions that she received a notification for nudity. She knew this could happen since she was filming a guy who walks around naked, but it was still worth it since the viewership exceeded expectations. The reason the addict stopped at the 47th floor is that the Tomb of the Brave is a great source of content, and it would be a waste to use it all at once. After completing the raid, he went to the enhancement center with the sword he got from the boss. Like the first time he enhanced a sword, he manages to enhance it several times until it reaches +9. He remembers the time he was desperate, which was the last thing he did before regressing. So, with a smile on his face, he enhances the sword once more, breaking it. He looks at the camera with a "it happens" expression, the shock of which is so great that Young faints, thinking it was a waste to break such a good sword. However, this was the addict's plan. Something discovered much later, the White Tiger sword is actually a low-performance weapon for its level, but its true value is revealed when it is destroyed during enhancement. He receives 2 recruitment emails. Initially, he thinks it's a mistake, but in reality, the emails were sent to both his original account, The Addict, and his fake account, Madongwei. The same professional gaming team that tried to recruit the addict sends a message to Madong, seeing his insane potential and unique style, practically a blockbuster formula. The professional Lim Joseph is skeptical, thinking that Madong isn't that good. He says that Madong has already tasted the money of the underworld, and even if he joined the best professional league in the world, he wouldn't make as much money as there. But the director says that the illegal tournaments are already being shut down, and this is the best time to reel him in. While they are discussing, Madong sends a response, and the director faints with excitement. The protagonist can't believe they tried to recruit someone who participated in the Total League, especially his secondary account. Despite several recruitment attempts after the Nameless Queen raid, the money offered was paltry, and the rules were very restrictive, so he hadn't joined any team until now. But now it's time to try to get the government to be more active in sponsoring esports. He will make his debut as a professional player using Madongwei. At the K1 branch, the director happily welcomes Madong, who introduces himself wearing a mask that modulates his voice and covers practically his entire face. Joseph, already disliking him, starts complaining about his tardiness, and again ends up arguing with the director. This scene he is witnessing firsthand is something he remembers very well because they did this publicly in the past. However, he can't be swayed by sentiment. He has to maintain a tough stance. He arrogantly responds to Joseph, putting the whole team on alert against him. He says that to join the team, he will need to pass the test and even offers the newcomer, the God of Combat, the first chance to apply, but he obviously refuses. The protagonist says he doesn't want to fight them one-on-one, and tells them all to come at him at once. In the game, they prepare for the fight. Madong equips the Pickaxe Mask, which has a serial killer ability that converts PK karma points into strength points. In the game, Korea's top rankers think it's going to be a massacre. Even the protagonist thinks he's facing an impressive team. The top 1, 5, 7, and 9 of Korea are going to fight him simultaneously. However, the result of the battle has already been decided. Outside, the director and Tae-kong watch the fight. The director asks why he didn't want to participate, and he says he wasn't in the mood. The group's healer is the first to attack. Even as a healer, he can still participate in battles. He uses a whip sword to strike at Madong, who repels the damage by causing an earthquake on the ground. The healer, who jumps to avoid the earthquake attack, is caught in midair and eliminated shortly after. The rankers watching don't understand what just happened. The God of Combat, observing from outside, realizes what he did, redirecting the power of the boots to the ground, which launched him into the air. Next to attack is Byung, using his stealth ability to deliver quick strikes that Madong easily dodges. His teammate intervenes using his shield to block the attack. Madong is paralyzed due to the shield's effects while the mage prepares a spell. He uses his gauntlet on the ground again. This time, they prepare, expecting Madong's advance. But upon seeing the ground boiling, they realize their movements are reduced. Madong resumes attacking the group, eliminating the mage first. They try to escape, but Madong uses the vortex, eliminating the group's assassin. The last survivor, Joseph, charges at Madong with his 2 shields. The protagonist nonchalantly dodges all his attacks. Joseph has stopped considering this a test and is fighting out of pride. Madong decides to go all out. With just one blow from his left arm, he knocks the shield out of Joseph's hand and lands several hits on him. Everyone outside witnesses this massacre, seeing Korea's best players being crushed by a single person. Heading to the Castle of Malice, the addict is searching for the last artifact. The castle is a dungeon infested with zombies, but they don't need to face them all. In the heart of the castle, there is a secret passage leading directly to the boss. As they follow the path, they hear someone screaming for help. Drake promptly tries to rescue, but the addict stops him. When the screams stop, the addict tells them to run inside the castle, saying if they are NPCs, they can help later, and if they are players, they are attracting the enemy's attention. Deeper into the dungeon, they find Camila, the gossip. Killing her, her ghost appears and explains her story. For spreading gossip, the emperor made her tear a pillow and let the feathers scatter, then collect them again. She couldn't gather all of them and was killed. A new quest is given: obtain all the white feathers. Looking around the room, Drake notices it's full of feathers. He asks if they'll need a vacuum cleaner item to collect them all. The addict picks up some feathers with his hand and uses the attribute of his boots to burn all the surrounding feathers, leaving only the ones he collected. Completing the quest, a black pillow falls. This pillow was used to recount the bad gossip. The addict tears the pillow, and black feathers fly into the sky, turning night into day. The reason for this is that the secret door only opens at night, but at night the zombies become much stronger, making it much harder to reach. With this tactic that makes everything more convenient, a hole in the wall appears, along with Dahi, being followed by a horde of zombies. He jumps into the hole with Drake, and Dahi follows. Before joining them, Dahi was live streaming for her followers in the Castle of Malice, pretending to be scared of the zombies. She creates content like a beautiful woman trying to escape from monsters. But turning off the live stream, she easily eliminates the zombies and hears a noise coming from the back door. Dirtying herself a bit, she starts the live stream again, saying she barely escaped the horde and asks for donations. She notices the sky darkening and a notification. Night has fallen, and the dead have risen. Now much stronger and angrier, they chase Dahi, who this time runs in genuine fear. She hears the addict's voice and heads towards him. They fall into a blood sewer, and she starts to argue with the addict, saying it's his fault she's there. He tells her to wait, saying this isn't the right place. A dark corridor full of dangers awaits them. Ahead, a pale man with scars is fighting what seems to be a scarecrow. They continue forward, fighting some zombies. Dahi takes advantage of the situation and tries to attack the addict. They start fighting again, and she even considers killing the addict and escaping, but knows where she is. And with Drake there, it's an impossible mission. Without confidence that she could defeat two unofficial rankers, she tries to form a party with the addict, but he rejects her. She continues trying to get him to accept the party, and he says he'll only accept if she gives him the axe. They keep walking down the corridor, with the addict pointing out the location of each trap. Dahi even asks if he's a GM since he knows all this information, but he responds that if he were a GM, he'd be swimming in money. In truth, even in his past life, he never died once on this map, thanks to using the information from other players who died before him. Maybe because of this obsession, he was able to reincarnate. You could say he's obsessed, a stagnant water in the same place for 15 years. This is why he's the best option to fix this rotten sewer. Reaching the end of the tunnel, they see a man fighting the boss, Jack-o'-lantern. He is pale and covered in scars but very skilled in combat. The addict, with a serious voice, says they need to kill him. Dahi thinks he wants to kill the boss and steal the items, but actually, who they need to kill is the most abominable player and a terrible serial killer, Zodiac Bundyvale. His kill count was in the hundreds. Most of these deaths were due to online conflicts, someone closer to being a monster than a player. And this person is right before their eyes hunting his prey. Jack, an A-rank monster with 1.5 million HP, is now critically low on health. This man alone managed this. When he's about to deliver the final blow to Jack, he is hit by 2 arrows in the shoulder, but Drake finds his reaction strange and is immediately attacked by Zodiac. They exchange several blows, and Drake realizes that the addict's advice was correct. The best way to fight him is by avoiding close-range attacks. Normal people would usually be intimidated when something hits them, even in a game with pain suppression. It's hard to ignore these reflexes, but that doesn't work with Zodiac. When an arrow is shot at him, he faces it without even blinking. This is due to a syndrome, a disease that causes an inability to feel pain. Because of this, he fears nothing and is extremely precise in his movements. Knowing that close combat would be more dangerous, Drake feels even more determined to fight up close. An intense battle ensues between the two, with blows from all sides. Watching from the outside, most people would think Drake is on the losing side because of his appearance. But he's not the top PK for nothing. Observing for a while, the addict discovers that he loves PvP more than anyone. Drake gets paralyzed due to Zodiac's weapons, giving him enough time to almost be finished, but the addict arrives before Zodiac can land the attack. He uses his boot's ability to throw Zodiac away. Impressively, Zodiac survives and fights the addict. He tries to use dismemberment again, but the addict strikes his weapon first. Zodiac tries to kick him but has the damage reflected back to him. With low HP, he finds himself cornered. To get out of this situation, he calls Dahi to work together. She was already waiting for an opportunity to kill the addict and wonders whether to accept the proposal. Despite the addict warning her not to accept, she agrees. Dahi descends from where she was and prepares to attack the addict but suddenly falls to the ground. Her HP starts to deplete rapidly due to the water necklace Zodiac is wearing, which distributes the damage taken to the party members, giving her 99% of the damage he has received so far. Analyzing his equipment more closely, the addict realizes they are all from the water nest, the place he planned to go next. The addict knew he was one of the pioneers but didn't know he was this fast. Drake worries now that Zodiac's HP is restored, but the addict says it's not so easy to kill Dahi. Zodiac's arm starts trembling thanks to Dahi's axe, which has the regiment's responsibility attribute. It increases an ally's attack and defense, but when the user dies, the debuff is applied. There are various debuffs, and the one that hit him was sleep. Now static on the ground, Jack has enough time to rip his head off, causing Dahi to die along with him. In front of Jack, the addict tells Drake to shoot 3 arrows into his head, causing the monster to begin to awaken consciousness. The addict chooses not to fight him further, making him open a portal that takes them to the true boss of the castle. In the past, Zodiac was the first to complete this dungeon, obtaining from the boss an item that was used to terrorize all DM players. However, now, the bearer of this item will be him. They advance to the boss's hall, but before they can enter, they are stopped by the mini-boss Gorgon guarding the entrance. Drake has unfinished business with the Gorgon, and chooses to stay behind while the addict proceeds to the boss. Entering the hall, he finds the Dark King sitting on his throne, murmuring some things that the addict ignores, heading straight into combat. In the past, the Vampire King was an essential weapon in the demons' fight against the angels. When his kill count surpassed thousands, the world began to call him the Dark King. The king attacks incessantly while the addict dodges his attacks. His blows are so powerful that getting hit takes almost half of his HP. The addict uses the item given by Jack-o'-lantern, fully restoring his HP. Now prepared, he continues the combat. In the past, it took about 10 years to reach this point. He was one of the top 100 Korean rankers, and the fight against the Dark King lasted 24 hours straight, using all kinds of spells and potions, along with spectators watching the live stream. But now, he has none of that. With his body literally naked and the knowledge ingrained in his flesh after living as an addict for 15 years, the only thing he has is experience. It is said that the 3 artifacts can kill even gods: the basilisk heart, the sandworm leather, and lastly, the item the Dark King possesses. The king shoots several black energy arrows at the addict. Despite being fast, they move at the same interval, making them easy to dodge. The king uses Blood Devourer, likely because the addict pressured him too much, but something strange happens, a malicious smile as if hiding something. Using 2 special attacks simultaneously, a black energy ball forms above his head. The Black Hand, an ability that inflicts 500% of his physical damage. The sandworm's skin can protect him, but for that, his HP must be full. Using Jack's pills, he raises his life, taking the attack head-on and surviving with 1 HP. The Dark King questions why he is there, what happened to his people. The addict, who has faced him before, does not recall these lines. The Dark King he knew had already lost all sanity, intoxicated by power, doing nothing but laughing. This Dark King before him is different. Instead of a mad creature, his eyes shine with melancholic agony, not murderous intent. The king uses Blood Devourer to drain the addict's life, losing 0.01% of his maximum HP. With his life at 360, he takes 1 damage per second. In other words, he has 360 seconds to kill the boss. The addict charges, stabbing him multiple times. His weapon also inflicts 0.01 damage, and with the boss's monstrous HP, this damage reaches 545 per second. The life the king drains from the addict is nothing compared to the damage he takes. Additionally, his passive poison ability is 4 times stronger and lasts longer than usual, and his blood deals 4 times this damage when it penetrates the target's bloodstream. His poison inflicts 0.01 of the maximum HP, and since he absorbed his blood, this damage is amplified 4-fold. So, in total, he loses 2,700 HP per second, meaning this battle will end in 30 minutes. The Dark King enters a frenzy, releasing power in all directions, then focuses on the addict, unleashing several attacks on his body. His cape can protect him with its tenacious ability, but only if his life is full. Using Jack's candies, he keeps losing and regaining life. His cape, which reflects 99% of the damage to enemies far above his level, will now reflect the attack he used at 500% of its strength. Like black blades emerging from his body, all the damage he inflicted on the addict returns to him. The Dark King, who had kept some of his sanity while not fighting anyone, may have completely lost it after being killed countless times by players. Perhaps there was this hidden story in the game. The addict, who fainted, is awakened by Drake. When he looks at the Dark King, he sees him lamenting for his people, now in darkness, finally dying and being taken by the shadows. The item he drops is the Blood Devourer ring, the most terrifying of the set called Godslayer. The perfect cycle that works by draining the enemy's vitality, leaving maximum life to receive a blow, and reflecting that blow back to the enemy, starting the cycle again. Drake, who managed to get his revenge, leaves Gorgon mutilated on the ground. Besides his item, An extra reward is given to the addict, a mini box containing Solomon's necklace, an item that the Dark King guarded before his battle. Solomon was a monarch wise enough to be called the King of Wisdom. It is said that he sealed the 7 demons that plagued his lands in a copper jar, and used his power to maintain peace. If Solomon's secret item is there, it means that the Dark King was actually King Solomon. In his letter, he mentions that he lost to the demons but is cut off by the protagonist, who impatiently skips the dialogue. Eojin, now at the police station for public indecency, receives a call from his manager. His debut as a professional has been scheduled. Before that, at his house, he gets a call from Manhwa from KGB, who is upset that he didn't save her contact. She called because she plans to start a new segment on her show and thinks he would like to appear as a guest. While he empties the fridge and puts everything into a blender, he says he's busy these days but will make time next month. As he makes a fitness concoction, he asks who the next guest on the show is. She replies that it's no one famous, not even debuted in the professional league yet. He bets he can guess who it is, and if he's right, she has to appear on his stream 10 times. If he's wrong, he'll appear on her stream 10 times. Confidently, Eojin says the mysterious guest is Madongwang, scaring Yang. He lies to her, not revealing his identity, and even complimenting himself. After hanging up, Eojin is excited that he will get Yang's participation in his streams 10 times. In the future, even with money, this will be difficult. His manager sends a message saying that the Otogi company will sponsor a big championship soon, and since his debut is already scheduled, it will likely start there. He takes off his clothes and gets into his Porsche, feeling free and unstoppable, only to be arrested for public indecency. Since he was driving inside the car, he wasn't immediately arrested but had to write a reflection letter. Always being naked in the game, wearing clothes had become uncomfortable for him. He is in a meeting with the manager, and he notices that the manager is trying to take advantage before the salary negotiation. Eojin, who lived as a savvy addict and was an experienced member of society, doesn't fall for it. When the manager mentions discussing the salary, he refuses, claiming they will discuss it after the championship. After his debut, his value as a player will skyrocket, company owners will kneel before him, and the incredible promising rookie will draw all the audience. They move on to the main topic. In the next competition, there will be 10 city leagues, including Seoul and Incheon, and their biggest rival is a team called Elites. They are a team created at the same time as K1. They were sponsored by large corporations and had a substantial budget for the player group. Their leader was in first place until Joseph surpassed him. They recently recruited 3 new rankers, making the group even more intimidating. While they are planning, Eojin recalls the tournament, as it was one of the hottest topics 15 years ago, and also had the highest betting prices. Finally, the championship begins. The first team to be introduced is Elites, exciting the crowd. K1, introduced afterward, leaves people who know some of the rankers there confused by the presence of 2 newcomers, Ma Tae-gang and a mysterious man wearing a mask. The Elites, watching their presentation, decide to ignore the 2 newcomers, thinking they pose no threat, focusing only on Joseph. Little do they know that ignoring the newcomers will be their biggest mistake. The first fight begins. At the protagonist's request, Tae-gang is the first to be placed. His opponent, the former top 1, underestimates him but is soon surprised by a heavy blow from Tae-gang. Even though he manages to defend, he still takes damage. As a counterattack, he uses an ability that deals 0.025 damage per second. Tae-gang shows why he holds the title of God of Combat, finishing his opponent with just 1 blow. Eojin says it was a mistake to think that Tae-gang was just a checkpoint until facing Joseph. Remembering 15 years ago, when he was just one of those 1,500 spectators, he reflects on his past choices. But Eojin decides to leave those useless thoughts behind and focus on the present. Standing on that stage where investors and their allies clash is enough to make his heart race. He has bet everything on these matches and is extremely excited about Tae-gang's victory. This fight made the total bets reach proportions of 7-1, meaning the protagonist won 7 times the investment value. Tae-gang continues fighting, this time facing the 11th ranked player in Korea. With the special ability to heal himself and a massive HP pool, he promises to be a tough opponent. However, 10 minutes into the combat, we see a unilateral victory for Tae-gang. When a healer heals, that healing isn't applied to themselves. Self-regenerations are done by calculating their position and the range of the healing spell. There is a slight delay of 0.1 seconds right after casting the spell. Just before this happens, if you push the healer away and stand where the healing will be cast, you can receive it. Realizing he's about to die, the healer switches places with his team's mage. She makes plants grow in the environment, draining HP just by stepping on them. But that's not the only problem. She switches with her sister, an archer who shoots multiple arrows at Tae-gang. Finding himself at a disadvantage, he sets his own feet on fire, destroying the plants and charging at the last sister, a melee combatant. The coach tries to tell Taegang to retreat, but the protagonist intervenes, saying that even if the whole team dies, nothing can kill him. Hit by cross sword strikes, Taegang, on the brink of death, still manages to land a hit. Exiting the capsule, he is showered with praise from the audience. The announcement of K1 against the elites made a big splash on the betting site. K1's defeat allowed people to win 3 times their initial bet. However, this time, with the protagonist playing as a K1 member, he will only bet on his own team. The amount won't be as high, but he already won 7 times what he invested by betting on Taegang. The matches continue, and K1 members suffer unilateral defeats. The sisters' teamwork is terrifying, making them seemingly unbeatable. The betting odds, which were 3-1, have now turned to 7-1 against them. The protagonist, seeing his money skyrocket, begins to tremble. Having bet all his money on his own team, he steps onto the battlefield. People seeing him for the first time doubt his abilities. However, the protagonist is calm. The spotlight, the audience, stepping onto the stage, it all reassures him. Finally, entering the scene, Wang joins the game. The enemy team's mage starts by using her plants to hinder his movements, then unleashes a full-power lightning strike on Madong. Immediately after, all the damage is reflected back at her, leaving people baffled by the counterattack. Wearing the addict's clothes underneath, Madong easily kills the opponent and moves on to the next. The archer tries to shoot her arrows, but with a strike to the ground, Madong disappears from her sight and ends up meters away. She tries to hit him, but he dodges mid-air, finishing off another opponent. Both the audience and his coach are astonished by his performance, now seeing hope for the team. A week earlier, while discussing how to defeat the sisters, Eojin confidently proposed that if he managed to kill them, he would start earning 10,000 per kill. This is practically the best treatment a professional can have, though it depends on how many tournaments he participates in a year, and how many he wins. The director said that if he managed to win, he could convince the higher-ups. Back to the present, Wang faces the opposing team's healer, brutally using him to recover his HP. Lastly, as the final opponent, he faces the last sister, the strongest of them all. She charges at him, but Madong dodges her blades. Her special attack seems to cut through the air simultaneously, but knowing this is impossible, and that she is merely attacking rapidly, he manages to evade the strikes. Madong grabs her sword, throwing it away, and finishes his opponent with a ground-shattering punch. Exiting the capsule, he is inundated by the crowd shouting his name. This is just the beginning of his professional career, but he is already becoming a role model and a symbol as a player. The fight is consecrated as an AC, which is when a player has the most kills in the match or defeats all the opponents. Although Mei Taegang killed Ong Jino early on, the game is still considered basically perfect. Madong definitely played a game that lived up to his name, leaving the stadium in awe and cheering his name. The director embraces him happily, saying he never doubted him. He begs the protagonist not to abandon him and promises never to distrust him again from now on. The protagonist reflects on his victory as he wiped out everyone without mercy, while the stadium roars with his name. His celebration is modest, merely keeping his fist clenched down. The scene cuts to another location. We see a building from the outside. Someone is watching the protagonist's fight on TV. A man with a companion enters the place, saying he collected the money. He asks, "What are you doing sitting there, Miss Dahi?" She is startled by what she sees on the screen, barely able to sip her drink, and not even forming a simple sentence correctly. Returning to the protagonist, we see in his thoughts that he is reflecting on his opponents, starting with the famous Taegang, and then Lim Joseph, who was even more determined after losing his first fight. No team in Seoul had faced both in a match. GODLIKE claimed their victory, and after gaining grand sponsors, they entered the league as the team representing the capital. The protagonist, in turn, won 49 times the amount of the initial bet using his real name, as he could not bet on himself as Wang. Since Madong is not a real person, he had no issues proving his identity to claim his winnings, and after a few days post-championship, he managed to buy a sports car. He observes the city from inside the car. While driving through the city, he would normally be doing raids, but today is special for him. The protagonist is looking for land to buy as he wants to build a capsule hotel. "It's time to make real money," he says, as everything he's done so far was to earn enough to prepare for his true beginning. Now that he has raised initial capital, he plans to put into practice the real business he had in mind. With a mischievous smile, he makes others uncomfortable. He stops to look around and sees many people since it's Friday. Some crazies are fighting on one side. On the other, a loving couple is enjoying a moment together. Even a DJ is playing loud music on the street. Not feeling comfortable in this place, he thinks he has the soul of an old man. For 20 years, the protagonist spent his free time playing games, without other hobbies or talents, making social environments seem strange to him. But he doesn't regret it, as he carries an important phrase for his life. If you have something to show, you don't need to be jealous of anything. Memories of his last fight come to the fore. He stands with his armor in the battle arena, and the stadium cheers for him after winning the fights. This confirms his previous decisions, making him prefer to climb tirelessly to the top on this new journey. An exciting competition where only fighting is needed to make progress is the only moment that makes him feel alive. His thoughts are interrupted as something catches his attention. Someone in an extravagant outfit is in front of him. The protagonist recognizes her as Yudahi. Quickly, he hides behind a post and remarks that only a Friday night provides a moment like this, questioning why she is so serious. He remembers that a few days ago, the girl sent a message to Madong's number, which he didn't read out of fear. He quickly checks his phone and sees the message she sent. There are many messages from her praising him, which scares him as he thinks it might be trouble. He continues looking at his phone until he notices something in front of him. The girl is on the street, saying it's hard to record videos while drunk and that the bar she was in had too many people because it was Friday and she wanted privacy. She pauses for a moment and wonders why she is still out so late. About 6 months ago, an uncomfortable situation happened at a nightclub when she was 20, making her realize she didn't like such things. This made her desire to play games full of monsters and raids grow even more. Still on the street, her desire to be gaming increases, making her consider going to a simple convenience store instead of a bar. Then she hears a noise coming from her pocket. When she looks at her pocket, she's puzzled by what she heard. She thought she had turned off message notifications because there were too many, but some contacts were still active, and upon receiving the message, she is startled. Her expression shows apparent joy. Madame Wang replied to her, asking for her help as the guild leader to kill someone in the game, a task she, according to her own words, is the only one capable of completing. The scene shifts to the city from a wide perspective. We get a better view of the environment. An expensive and luxurious car approaches. Why did he only respond now? Someone questions. Inside the car, on the passenger seat, is a luxurious coat thrown aside. We see the girl, who is in the driver's seat, unable to believe that her message was answered by a pro player. She quickly realizes that this opportunity could be seized. She concludes that leaving records of her messages online is not a good idea, so she will try to contact the player in person. Upon checking the messages again, she receives the invitation to meet outside, but asks where exactly that would be. She gets irritated, questioning whether the pro player is everywhere or at a specific place. Then she receives confirmation that the opportune moment to meet him is now, and she doesn't understand his urgency. Still, she confirms and asks where she should go. The direction of the conversation makes her think that all good players are arrogant due to their direct responses. She is extremely upset and angry with the conversation. Looking in the car's rearview mirror, she notices someone approaching, wondering if this is some sort of superpower or something like that. The mysterious person startles her as they get closer, and her reaction is one of extreme astonishment. We see that the person is the protagonist, who is outside the car, apparently admiring its exterior beauty. Who is this psycho? She asks, observing him. Some time passes, and the two are together inside the car. It seems that the girl has changed her behavior towards his company. She doesn't understand the reason for his clothing, saying it has a frightening air. He remembers that it has been months since he spent time with the he, unlike his past life when he followed her everywhere. The girl asks how he got there. On foot, he says. She concludes that he is proud and not embarrassed to be in the car with her. The protagonist says that from his point of view, she is a client, not a woman. This only makes her realize his professionalism. She asks him if he has any problem with a professional doing a PK for her. He responds no, and that he knows her opponent, the addict. He's an extremely strong player, he concludes. The girl says that he does have strong skills, despite his unpleasant personality. The protagonist says he wants to fight regardless of the girl's request. She understands his motivations as she has the same interests. She concludes that she can carry out the fight, and that it will also be a major event, earning them a lot of money and recognition. The protagonist realizes her intentions, saying that the idea of the fight is really good, recognizing her talents for the task. She responds that she will assemble a team for her guild's commentating session to further promote the event, all for free. Considering the scale of the event, her advantage will be significant, planning to deliver everything without causing a scandal, which startles the protagonist. I know what you're thinking, she says. It makes sense to be suspicious, but I'm serious. I want to defeat him just as much as you do, no matter what. Furious, she says that the addict keeps her awake at night, and made her lose a large amount of money, as well as all the stress and fear of encountering him again in the game. Her anger is palpable, wishing for the addict to be banned from the game forever and wanting to play again without him interfering, at least once. The protagonist thinks that if someone heard this, they might think he is stalking her. Although he has defeated her in the game several times, this is because she has obstructed his journey. All he did was act according to his plans, so her losses were caused by her own actions. He thinks that what happened in his past life was his fault, and that he intends to take full responsibility. The girl calms down from her nervous state and apologizes. The protagonist accepts and agrees that she has the right to be angry. She says she wants revenge but is not good enough for it in the game. In real life, she could manage but doesn't know his address, settling for hating his videos. The protagonist knows well the extent of her hatred, but she apologizes for showing her aggressive side the first time they meet, though he just wants her to pay him well. The girl feels relieved as she can finally share everything she's been feeling, thanking the protagonist for listening to her. She takes advantage of the situation and is about to make another proposal to him. She asks if he is interested in acting on behalf of her guild in the PK. She waits anxiously by his side for his response. The protagonist had anticipated something like this, and if he joins the U's guild, they could all gain popularity and power simultaneously. He concludes that his area effect skills would be effective in guild wars, a benefit equivalent to the price the girl paid for him to join. He tells the girl that he doesn't like groups, but she retorts that it doesn't depend on who is in the group. Asking this, she tries to move her hand closer to the protagonist, asking what he has to say. Making an invitation for them to eat instant noodles and talk elsewhere, she brings her face closer to his. He realizes what is happening and simply looks at her seriously. He asks if she really mentioned instant noodles. She is confused by what he said. He then lists all the negatives of instant noodles, making it clear that he doesn't like them at all because a player's diet is important for them to live longer. After concluding his lecture on how bad instant noodles are, he thinks that Yudehi is 20 years old and that her 15-year-old version was nothing attractive. He then says goodbye and ends the conversation. As he grabs a bag from the car, he concludes that the 35-year-old girl was much more attractive, whom he liked more, and that her younger version is very innocent. Her personality and temperament seem more like that of a younger sister, as she opens the car's trash disposal compartment. The girl seems displeased with his reaction. She immediately jumps in his direction, asking what he is doing and saying that she will handle the trash disposal herself. Holding all the trash in his hands, he is surprised by her reaction. 10 years ago, he remembers being in the passenger seat just like now, and the girl acted as if she were taking care of him, trying to present a good image of herself. The encounter happened on a rainy night after he had donated money during one of his streams. After that, he carefully removed the accumulated trash from the girl's car. He did this because he had nothing better to do, even though the girl said he didn't have to, but he still felt happy doing something. Although he never managed to get back into her car, the protagonist developed the habit of always removing trash from cars to ensure he could get into her car again, and he didn't forget about it. Even in taxis, he kept this habit. He thinks that his behavior was indeed like a mindless follower, and that it was very frightening. Perhaps mindset is a more appropriate word, he concludes. He gets out of the car and says he will throw the trash away on the way. The girl, alone in the car, is unsure how to react to this situation. She doesn't understand the protagonist's intentions, asking why he has this habit, as it seemed very natural, implying he has done it before. The girl looks at the trash compartment and notices that it is exactly the same as new. The protagonist, in his thoughts, concludes that it was the first time the ashtray was cleaned, as he later discovered that the girl felt her heart tighten that day. He looks up and sees that it is raining, concluding that the girl said it was like exposing her own inner self. We see her in her car, apparently reacting as the protagonist described, but he is unsure if what she said was true. She is still in the car and asks why her heart feels this way when she hasn't even drunk. The chapter begins with a voice asking, "Who are you?" "I am Madong Wang." Another voice replies, "The one who debuted in the professional league. Congratulations, your fights are very good," Madong Wang says. "From now on, I'm going to kill you." We see that the fight between the addict and Madong Wang has started, with both staring at each other. The addict laughs at the death threat made by his opponent. Madong Wang simply stares at him, reaffirming what he said. The addict asks if Madong has lost his screws. He retorts that he doesn't take disrespect from someone who walks around without armor. The addict wants to know why he wants to attack him. "To see who is truly the strongest," Madong replies. He then delivers an attack to his opponent, shaking the ground with the impact. The addict dodges and asks if a professional player can afford to do PKs this way. Madong replies that there is nothing in his contract that prevents him, immediately delivering another blow towards his opponent. The addict dodges and counters with his blade. He then delivers a kick to the enemy's face and leaps with the momentum, questioning why the person who defeated the elite is trying to kill him. The addict feels honored in a way, but this doesn't guarantee that he will let him win, and so he charges at Madong. The fight is making waves online as Madong Wang is streaming live on his channel. Some nerds are extremely excited by what they are seeing, eager to watch the fight in person, but the location is private because Madong didn't want to be disturbed. The confirmation that the addict is actually in the battle comes from hearing his voice, which adds to the excitement of the fight between the two. "They are from another world," the nerds say as they watch the fight. Back to the fight. Madong leaps towards his opponent, ready to throw a punch. A close-up of his face shows blood in his eyes. The battle intensifies with Madongwang unleashing a powerful attack, even altering the environment around him. The addict reacts with fear to the impending attack. Then a noise of a blow landing is heard, and the addict disappears from the scene. Other nerds watching the live stream don't quite understand what happened, thinking that the fight ended with Madong's strike, and he ends the stream immediately after landing the hit. The addict posted a video, a nerd shouts, calling others to watch. Someone linked the video, he quickly exclaims as he clicks to watch. In the video, the addict appears, complaining about dying to someone who came out of nowhere. He apologizes to his audience and informs them that his scheduled stream for today has been cancelled because he was punished for his death, saying he will return the next day. The scene cuts to a closed fist, and Dahi is celebrating that the addict finally lost, loudly declaring her love for Madong. She is happy because now she can sleep peacefully without losing her hair from stress. But the addict doesn't bow his head, declaring revenge against Madongwang, asserting that he will finish him off the next day on his live stream. Comments on his videos show that his followers are furious about his defeat and are clamoring for his revenge. Repeated searches online show that many are interested in the rematch, trying to predict who will win this time. Even bets are being placed on both players. Dahi is reading everything and is upset with the addict's supporters, saying that his apologies are just to gather more donations while Madong earned a lot. She should be making money from the match, but she is determined to donate to Madong, believing she is helping him, but her brother says she has already done that recently. She asks if she is doing something wrong by donating to her favorite streamer, and her brother says she has already spent too much without even paying attention to the amounts. Before the PK, a message appears thanking Lukatme for the donation. The girl jumps with joy while her brother thinks it's the least he could do given the amount. The brother is satisfied because he has seen what he wanted and doesn't care if Madongwang dies or not. His sister looks at him and asks if that is really what he thinks. She reflects on her feelings and continues to not understand them. The scene cuts to a deserted, illuminated street. A character appears and concludes that the addict and Madongwang are the same person, even though he won't admit it because he met him after the illegal tournament. He looks at the image of Madongwang on his TV and thinks, who is the person behind the character? We are transported 6 months back to a fight scene. An enemy is being struck with great force. The protagonist was fighting him in his addict form. He is apparently farming but is frustrated by the enemies not dropping items. He says he has business to attend to with someone who is after them. The setting is called Dorian Grey Forest, level unknown. The enemies approach him very slowly, and they writhe, seemingly transforming. They turn into copies of the protagonist with 33.3% of his power, indicating they are weak dark matter creatures unaware of their existence with no defined rank. The protagonist calls them doppelgangers and recalls a popular saying that seeing 3 of them means death is near. He charges to attack to see if the saying is true. He immediately encounters one of his duplicates, wounding it in the chest with his blade. The other copy, which is behind him, watches, and the remaining 2 move towards the protagonist. He realizes their strategy of combining forces to attack him, although he thinks it won't work against him. So he uses a boot as a weapon and mocks the duplicates for not having one like it. The duplicates show no reaction, while an explosion occurs, killing them. The protagonist manages to defeat them with a single blow, boasting about his strength. However, a shadow emerges from the ashes and rises in its original form. The protagonist has been eagerly awaiting its arrival. The creature rises and manifests in a grand form. Its name is Doppelganger Kaiser. The Kaiser was apparently supposed to be the Emperor of Dark Matter, but since he's not identifiable, it's still unknown if he is alive or not. But then he changes his form, transforming into Madongwang's armor. We see Madongwang materialized in his full armor set. The shadow screams loudly in a frightening manner and stretches its hand, about to do something. Then it transforms it into Madong's gauntlet. The silhouette of its face is about to transform. Then it turns into Madong's helmet. With the transformation complete, the shadow introduces itself. Its face, covered by the helmet, seems to be waiting for something. The protagonist is also in his armor and looks at the duplicate, recognizing it as a true copy, wondering what it is like inside. He moves his hand to his face and removes the part of the armor covering it, and wonders who looks better with a smile. The duplicate also moves its hand to its face. It tries to imitate his movements, and as it pulls down the mouthpiece, its slime is revealed. Then the duplicate completely removes the piece of armor, throwing it away on the ground. As it does this, the piece of armor transforms into something different, revealing another type of armor. The protagonist quickly realizes this and is pleased. He throws himself with his arms outstretched and catches the piece in his hands before it falls. The duplicate notices his vulnerability and attacks him. He, in turn, manages to dodge the attack. Looking at his opponent, his expression is one of distrust. He notices that the enemy has jumped and is high above his head. The protagonist dodges again, not understanding how the enemy moves so fast. The duplicate plants its hand in the rocky ground with its hook arm, and then pulls the arm back with all its strength. The protagonist tries to dodge all the rocks flying towards him. Observing the damage and strength of the duplicate, he imagines that others see him like this when he is fighting, thinking he's the best. He imagines that another fight like this would be good, but is about to attack his opponent with all his strength, hoping to end the battle. But he's not there for that, and then a snake summon appears, brought forth by his power. It seems he has obtained the item he needed, completing his objective, and then mounts the serpent, which carries him away. Holding the item he picked up earlier, the protagonist concludes that it was what he needed for his professional debut, promising to return later and telling the duplicate to wait for him. The duplicate remains there, merely watching him escape, and apparently, with the opponent's escape, it is not satisfied with how the fight ended. The protagonist reflects that he went to Dorian Gray Forest that day for two reasons. The first was to obtain the rogue mask, which would increase his attributes, making him even stronger with specific advantages in battles. This item is only made by tearing it from a Kaiser, making it impossible to obtain through other means, unknown to many even after 15 years. The other reason is to do that thing, he says. The Kaiser is a hidden boss in this forest, difficult to find. So if they start suspecting he's pretending to be two different people, he can kill the duplicate and resolve everything. The addict is his personal style, while Wang was quite famous in his past life. He has always been curious to know which of the two was better, and thought it would be fun in many ways, also creating that scenario 6 months ago with plans in mind. And now back to the present scene. The protagonist thinks he will have to kill him due to Yudahi, never imagining something like this could happen. Returning to the forest and facing the enemy, he asks how the copy has been spending its false life. The armor is simply standing still, showing no reaction. The protagonist fiddles with a panel, programming the voice modulator just for when Wang speaks. He takes his stance, saying that now it's his turn to kill Wang. The adversary asks why he thinks this time will be different from the last. The addict isn't 100% sure due to the opponent's strength, but is willing to try nonetheless. Madong responds, admitting that his enemy is also strong. A dialogue ensues, and they complement each other, describing each other's qualities, saying that brilliant minds think alike. Nerdy fans watch the broadcast eagerly. Everyone is waiting to see the outcome of the confrontation. Even Yudahi is glued to her PC screen. The fight is watched by many curious spectators. A character who recognizes Eojin acknowledges his brilliance and praises him. The addict then begins the fight, promising not to go easy on his opponent. "I've never lost," says Wang. He challenges the enemy to battle with his pincers. He delivers a strike with his antlion pincers, causing a special effect called Vortex. "Going all out from the start?" "No way," says the addict. He charges his attack again to summon the serpent, and brings it into the battle, using it as a mount. Some spectators nearly jump out of their seats when the addict uses his Jormungand through the vortex created by the opponent. Jormungand is helping in the battle. The addict uses it as a boost to jump and attack from above the enemy. But Madong charges a powerful punch with the pincers, and apparently lands a direct hit. The protagonist notices an increase in his opponent's strength, and ironically asks if he was leveling up his attributes in his free time. The veins in his arms start to pulse as he charges one of his attacks. He then uses the special skill Heart of the Depraved. "I came to kill you, Wang," says the protagonist. "We meet again. Do you think it will be different this time?" replies Madong. "I'll try, even though I'm not sure I'll succeed since you're quite strong," says the addict. "I've never lost a fight," adds Madong. The addict attacks from above with his blade. We see the entire scene on fire. The ground is completely destroyed. An explosion in the fight splits the two opponents, breaking everything around them. Madong prepares to strike his opponent. He tries to hit him, but the opponent dodges the attacks. The addict ironically says that his enemy's heavy gauntlets are making him slower. He mentions that Madong is stunned for a few seconds after using the vortex, making his attacks ineffective for a while, even if repeated. The addict mentions that it's time for Madong to create an earthquake, predicting the attack. Madong braces himself and prepares his attack. Then he causes the earthquake in the battle scene with ease. Some spectators who watch the fight find it amazing since they have been watching for 40 minutes, and neither of them has landed a single hit. Other viewers watching online say that the earthquake completely destroyed the scenery, and they can't even remember what it was like. The protagonist stretches his hand, preparing to attack. He quickly uses his magical power on the enemy. The walking armor is bewildered by what just happened. The special skill of the Dark King, Blood Devourer, was activated, and the addict, satisfied, asks what it feels like to have your blood drained. No matter if the opponent's blood is poisonous, he can still use his skill. "Shall we start finishing the fight now?" he asks, while attacking his opponent with his blade. The armor plants its pincers in the ground again. It's trying to provoke another earthquake. But now it seems the effect was not the same as before, as it looks like it's using it to escape the fight. The armor's boot appears to project air underneath it. Its expression beneath the helmet seems to be one of fear. The addict calls it an idiot for using an area skill without having enough energy to jump, digging its own grave. The armor simply looks at him from below, in the lava pit. It seems to be furious, preparing to attack, but it faces the opponent and simply says in a frightening manner that it will return. The addict apparently dislikes this reaction, showing contempt. The spectators also do not understand what happened. Other nerds watching the live stream expected something else to happen. All the curious onlookers seemingly wanted a different outcome. Someone notes that the armor's voice is different. It sounds rougher than usual. No one had ever heard this voice before since Madong used a modulator, confusing everyone as to why he didn't use it before and how someone speaks this way. The protagonist is impressed by how his opponent bid farewell and wonders if he, as Madong, would be like that, ensuring he would return next time to defeat him. That's how the stream ended, as expected, and it was a success. This time, the second battle between the two ended with the addict's victory. Only a destroyed scene remained. The addict notes that the score with his opponent is tied 1-1. Dahi, who was watching the live stream, is incredulous with the result. She insults the addict, not believing he almost killed her favorite, Madongwei. Her brother tries to comfort her, asking if she found the fight easy to watch. She is in tears, blowing her nose into tissues. She cannot come to terms with it, and tries to wipe her face with the tissue. She simply stares at the screen, saying that this way it won't work. Her brother is startled by her reaction. She shouts that from now on her guild, You Die, is the official fan club of her favorite streamer. Her brother can hardly believe what he has heard. He thinks that the guild has more female members than male ones. Furthermore, most of the men follow the leader without even questioning, so not much will change, and even so, he cannot avoid the question. But why? He asks. It's clear that going against his sister's wishes means certain death, so all he can do is ask delicately. What are you going to do with this? He asks. The girl explains the reason for her question, and asks if her decision isn't obvious. To kill the addict. I'm going to avenge Madong myself, she replies. She emphasizes that she will kill him at any cost for the sake of Madong, declaring the addict dead meat from now on. The protagonist, on the other hand, is very happy because his victory is absolute, with both of his accounts receiving numerous donations. His popularity also increased due to the fight. The video of the Dark King raid that went up on his channel adds more fuel to the fire. He comments on how frighteningly fast the views and subscribers are increasing, with the addict's channel almost reaching 1 million followers. It seems that many people were moved by Madong's defeat. Fans are very agitated, especially because of his voice. On the other hand, the addict is starting to become the image of a bad and annoying guy. He was already disliked by girls before, but now it has worsened, although the guys are cheering for him. The protagonist sits in front of his computer, thinking about all this. He remembers being both people at the same time. He looks at his phone, which is turned off. He did this because it was overheating from so many received messages. But he decides to turn it back on to check the statuses. And when he turns it on, he is bombarded with so much information. He tries to accept all the friend requests, but if he does that, he will exceed the limit of 5,000 and will need to create another account just for the followers. He sees that among the received messages are streamers, DJs, production directors, models, webtoon writers, bloggers, influencers, shopping mall owners, and advertisements. But one message in particular catches his attention. Apparently, someone who knew him from a distant past is trying to reconnect, making him unable to believe what he reads. He comments that it might be one of his old classmates. Why are they being nice to me after treating me like trash before? He asks. This guy was known as a bully. Why does he want to do business with me now? The protagonist thinks about the message on his phone. He sees that the so-called bully is inviting him out. Someone deliver this paper to Eojin, says a person holding a paper, saying that the lazy teacher brought this for her. What's this? A girl asks, and another responds that the paper proves the person described doesn't have parents. She, as the representative, must handle the delivery. The representative says she doesn't want to do the task, and another girl questions why she became the representative. She simply replies that she thought it would be easy. Eojin needs to hurry and choose a place, she said. The teacher warned that anyone without a partner would be placed next to the representative. Her friend asks her to deliver the paper. She herself will handle delivering the paper to Eojin. She reports that she also lives alone with her mother, so she has to sign her paper anyway, and will deliver it to him later. The representative agrees and hands over the paper. Eojin is in his chair, downcast, and with his arms crossed. He apparently isn't pleased to be there at all. The bespectacled girl delivers the paper to him as promised. Eojin from the future wakes up in desperation. He was napping, probably exhausted, and ended up having this memory from his past. Now he is in a well-dressed car, about to do something. A week ago, the addict received a call from his future YouTube manager, congratulating him for reaching 1 million subscribers and inviting him to a party. The manager insists on his presence, sending the invitation to his address. The protagonist doesn't understand, but the manager insists that he is a special guest. He was watching something on his monitor, sitting in his room, called Your League. The award winner of Supernova is Astro Mr. Eojin, chosen as one of the 50 new super YouTubers of the year, says the event narrator. The protagonist used to think it would be great to be recognized, but having been excluded for 35 years, he now struggles to get used to being the center of attention. He left the party and ended up falling asleep while resting in his car. The message he received earlier seems to have been enough to trigger a dream from the past, making him feel uneasy. He says he finally understands why protagonists and stories end up showing off to old classmates. Perhaps the authors tried to feel better by writing it. He rests in his car, seemingly remembering something. The memory of the girl with glasses delivering the paper returns, and he calls her Yoon Sol. He wonders if the girl will attend the party, seeming to hold something he would like to say to her. At the door, a huge explosion occurs in battle. A player named Ma Tae Gang is the first to hunt a rank B monster of level 99 named Ankylogios. He is in the middle of the battle with the monster. Someone is watching the fight on TV and admires him because he is handling the monster alone. His skills seem amazing. Some spectators wonder what items are so powerful. "Hey, aren't you guys too old for this?" someone shouts. "Don't you think you're too old to watch this?" That was Kwon Hyung-kwon, 21 years old, saying he stopped playing when he enlisted. The rookies there haven't woken up yet as they were playing in the dormitory. While preparing a steak, he gives a long lecture to the other recruits, telling them not to waste time on work and that they will understand when they focus on adult things. Later, we see a door opening. It was the protagonist timidly arriving at the Cheongsongliang Elementary School meeting. Everyone is surprised by his arrival. They thought the protagonist wouldn't show up since he has become famous now. The meat guy from earlier doesn't watch TV or play games, so he doesn't know what the protagonist does, not understanding the reaction of the others. A girl there praises the protagonist, saying she watched all his videos and is a big fan. She even made a donation, and one of them begs for an autograph for her brother. They remember being unpleasant in the past, not talking to him. The protagonist mentions that elementary school didn't end so long ago for the others, but for him, it's been almost 20 years. He awkwardly smiles and says it's good to see everyone there. One of the girls mentions that she always thought he was very mature, but in her memories, the protagonist only sees the insults she used to make in the past. The army guy joins the conversation, greeting him and saying he looks well and is even famous now. The protagonist remembers him as a bully from school who always beat him up for various reasons. A memory from the last year of elementary school in the summer surfaces, with the bully hitting him. The bully is saying that the representative was forced to sit near him because he didn't choose a place. He tries to force him to change his decision and move away from her. He also says that the protagonist doesn't have friends and could at least learn to be observant. He also tells him to level up his character in the game before class ends. Finally, he insults him as a coward, saying that if he is bad at studies and sports, there's no reason for him to be in school, feeling disgusted by his presence. The protagonist is simply on the ground, all beaten up, with a sad look as he endured the beatings and heard all the insults. Back in the present, the bully asks what the protagonist does now. He simply replies that he plays and comments on games. The bully dismisses the protagonist, saying he hasn't changed at all, arguing that he should stop gaming and look for a real job to earn money. He adds that he himself has saved $20,000, not wanting to brag, but that the protagonist will stop gaming as soon as he starts earning money with a regular job. A girl interrupts the conversation and says that her brother informed her that the protagonist was on TV, startling the bully who didn't understand what it was about. On TV, the broadcast of the award ceremony for the new YouTube star is showing, where the protagonist won the award as one of the 50 best on the platform. The narrator continues to describe his achievements, saying he is number 1 in views and top 10 in the gaming category with an advantage over the others. The bully is surprised by what happened along with everyone else at the meeting, and the protagonist simply thanks on the broadcast after receiving the award. The bully is left speechless, literally drooling over what happened. The protagonist ironically says that the bully was right. Making money on his account is quite fun. The atmosphere at the location changes. Some try to talk to the protagonist about their businesses and regular jobs, asking him to promote them on his channel. The bully is now completely humbled, listening to what others are saying to the protagonist. Some girls continue trying to persuade him to do advertising on his channel, even asking to take a photo with him. The protagonist simply says he is getting tired. In his mind, he thinks he is surrounded by 21-year-olds while he is 36, feeling disconnected from them due to their age difference. He doesn't have many memories involving the others, concluding that he shouldn't have attended the meeting. Coming back to reality, he says goodbye to everyone, mentioning he has other things to take care of. But he looks surprised as something catches his attention. He sees a girl among the others who seems to be the one he was looking for. He confirms that it was Yusol and that she had been there the whole time. She simply leaves through the door before him. The protagonist remembers that he thought he had something to say to her when he saw her in his car, so he runs out, trying to catch up with her, and apologizes, saying he will cover all the food and drinks served at the meeting. The girl walks normally outside the establishment. She looks at a sign in front of her, but she is surprised by something. She blushes when someone calls her name. It was the protagonist running toward her. He thanks her because he finally found her. The girl is unsure of his intentions, confirming if he is really Lee Eojin. The girl is surprised to see him. He is genuinely happy to find her. She asks if he really is the same Lee Eojin. The protagonist feels awkward talking to her. He doesn't know what to say now that he's in front of her. He seems very nervous and is sweating, trying to start a conversation. He then invites her to talk somewhere else. The girl says she had forgotten before but congratulates him on the award. He is surprised that she saw it on TV, thinking that one of my classmates would become a celebrity. That's amazing, she says. The protagonist, feeling awkward, doesn't see himself as a celebrity. He asks her what she has been up to. The girl responds that she has been studying business administration at university, but is currently on vacation. She concludes by saying she just graduated because she left high school early and did well in college. The protagonist praises her intelligence, but she says she just did her best. The protagonist seems satisfied with the conversation and, though abruptly, would like to thank you Sol. She is surprised and asks why he is thanking her. He mentions that back in elementary school, just before a field trip, she gave him the exemption support paper instead of the teacher or the class representative. Even though no one wanted to be near him, her gesture made him not forget it. Embarrassed by saying this, he just holds his cup. The girl replies that she feels bad for receiving thanks for something anyone would do, even though the protagonist insists that it meant a lot to him at the time. She refers to him as Eojin and apologizes. He asks what she is apologizing for. She says that honestly, she went to the meeting because she thought he would be there too, but she couldn't say anything and left early after hesitating. She intertwines her fingers shyly, trying to formulate a sentence. With her hands still together, she calls his name. The protagonist is startled, but she says it might seem sudden, but she has something to ask him. We see that they are in a coffee shop. The girl says that her mother is very ill, and the hospital and medication expenses have forced her to sell the house and start renting. I'm not asking for a loan, she says. Embarrassed by the whole situation, she falls silent. The protagonist watches her, trying to understand what she means. He finally seems to understand. Sol mentions that while taking care of her mother, she looked for something to do and started doing live streams recently, though her channel is still small. The protagonist gets excited upon hearing this, asking what kind of live streams she does and on which platform, even asking if it's about beauty. She replies that she worked part-time in a makeup store and knows a lot about it, so if it's not a problem for him. And before she finishes, she becomes embarrassed. The protagonist notices her changing expression. She quickly apologizes, saying she is making a big fuss. An awkward silence fills the room. She quickly stands up and apologizes for wasting his time, saying she will pay for the coffee and saying goodbye as the protagonist tries to stop her from leaving. Then he quickly stands up and grabs her arm. He asks if she wants to appear as a guest on one of his live streams, saying it's a good way to repay him. He concludes that it will probably be difficult to do this alone, so he offers to help her with anything she needs. In his thoughts, the protagonist realizes it's normal for someone who has spent their whole life without asking for help to feel embarrassed about setting aside their pride to ask for assistance. The next day, we see the sunny sky. Some city streets are apparently empty. The protagonist's car approaches. The girl hears and is surprised by all the things he brought. He mentions that it's extra equipment he had at home and will use for the live stream. She hesitates to borrow the expensive equipment, but he says he's giving it as a gift. She insists that he doesn't need to do that, but he retorts that he will do whatever he can, and she can pay him back when she gets rich. Her mother is at home, puzzled by the visit and asking if he is a friend or a boyfriend. The girl feels embarrassed, but the protagonist introduces himself as Sol's friend. Her mother says that since that's the case, they can divide the chores, although the house isn't tidy. The protagonist just tells her not to worry and to rest. He asks Sol why the live stream is about beauty, saying that study sessions would suit her better because she's good in academics. I'm not good at teaching, she says. I can understand the subject, but it's different from teaching, and I can't take care of my mother if I do something like that. I couldn't understand a single word from a professor at one of the best universities in the country, says the protagonist. He finishes setting up the equipment and is satisfied. He mentions that it should be enough for her to get started, and the girl is impressed by everything. She even compares the equipment to a television studio. The protagonist asks if she had been using a lamp in her phone until now. He mentions that one reason channels get few views is poor quality equipment. Even a single light panel can make a big difference. The protagonist asks what her content is about. Sol responds that she just shows some products and the effects each one has on her hands. When asked about the viewers' reactions, she mentions that she doesn't have many, just around 15 views on average. He thinks that she has a long way to go. Still, He finds it amazing that 15 years of live streaming games can be useful to someone else, as this is the first time he's helping someone. With everything ready, the protagonist starts the broadcast and announces a guest. He introduces the girl as Vice President Broadcast Joker Feet Viciado. At the same time, we are shown the tomb of the brave outside. A battle scene begins. A character is fighting a giant insect. Debris is scattered across the scene. The giant insect appears to be defeated. This is level 46 of the Tomb of the Brave. The isolation boss Kaidamura has been killed, and the player is rewarded. He mentions that it became much harder after level 30. He notes that Eojin's record was level 47 and that he will make sure to surpass it this time. The player receives a notification. "What's this?" he asks, staring at the notification with a mysterious look. The notification says to kill Viciado. He looks at it in doubt. "Again?" he exclaims, asking, "What have you been doing, Eojin?" We return to the broadcasting equipment with someone mentioning that sunscreen is next. The person is discussing the qualities of sunscreen and that it takes effect 30 minutes after application, so you can't leave the house immediately after applying it. Soon after, tips are given on how to apply it all over the face. They say it's not an advertisement but that these are the best and most affordable men's products. Then we see that the host is the protagonist, wondering how he ended up in this situation as he imagined helping his friend in a very different way. He asks for permission while the vice president of the room applies makeup on him. The protagonist asks if chest makeup isn't an exaggeration. She says it's part of the main stage makeup using her brush to shade him. He mentions that when it was suggested by the audience, he didn't think he would be involved, but agreed since the focus of the live stream is on men's beauty tutorials. The girl heard the suggestion and got excited, saying she would start with the chest and asking him to take off his shirt. Seeing the chat, he curses everyone, as they were responsible for asking him to do this. He goes crazy reading the messages and says that's enough. The protagonist thought Sol would do something simple like showing products in her hands, but he reflects that, except for Daehee, this is the first time he's been close to another girl. Sol says it's good to apply the product to the ears and neck as well, mentioning that to maintain the sunscreen's effect, it needs to be reapplied every 2 or 3 hours. She looks at the protagonist, satisfied with his work. He, in turn, asks why she reacted that way. Sol quickly takes off a headband that holds her hair back, and he asks what she's doing. The girl mentions that he was right and asks him to look, saying he looks better with his hair styled this way, making him feel embarrassed. The chat goes wild, asking if this is the same Viciado they used to see. He quickly tries to fix his hair back to how it was before, hating the new hairstyle, but the girl says she likes the current look. She is surprised as the protagonist extends his hands towards her hair. He says he wants to see how she looks with the headband, and the girl seems to dislike the idea. She becomes extremely embarrassed by her headband hairstyle. The protagonist, in turn, is surprised, looking slightly shocked by her new appearance. He thinks the girl has deceived everyone, but she changes the subject, saying the stream was pure humiliation and a revelation of appearances. The chat goes into a frenzy over the girl's beauty, leading the protagonist to call them traitors. He then takes over the live stream presentation and says that his friend has been hiding her beauty all this time. She simply asks what he's talking about. He curses the chat again, as he thought they were exclusively his fans, but the comments now focus on the girl's appearance. Her mother appears and asks for permission, inquiring what is happening in the room where they are. She sees the protagonist shirtless and with makeup, and her daughter with her bangs tied up and a flushed face. The girl tries to say they weren't doing anything strange and that they were live streaming, so her mother couldn't enter. She mentions they were making more noise than usual. The protagonist can only focus on the chat with the funny comments from the viewers, mentally yelling at them to be quiet. The rest of the live stream continues in this friendly atmosphere. Afterward, the protagonist received a question about bra advertisements. Just 3 days after the live stream, Sol's channel reached 150,000 subscribers. She is extremely grateful to Eojin. After the collaboration, her numbers increased significantly, reaching the top ranking very quickly, all thanks to the protagonist's help. He mentions it's due to her skills, but she insists that he lent money for medical bills, and through her channel, she intends to pay him back. Sol mentions that her mother is much better as she was hospitalized and had surgery to move better, emphasizing her gratitude. Her mother also invited him to her home someday, saying she would prepare dinner. The protagonist thanks her for the invitation, saying he's looking forward to it. Yoon Sol is famous now, so there shouldn't be any problems, concludes the protagonist. Moreover, she has her own skills, paving a good path ahead. He says he will take care of himself now, right after mentioning a message from Drake regarding the resurgence of a murder request for Viciado. To find those responsible, he relies on the information collector from the past few days. While thinking about this, someone called him, asking if he was Viciado. He looks back and sees a warrior girl who called him. Wow! Even ordinary users recognize me now, he thinks. Yes, what's the problem? If you're not a pervert running around naked, who else could you be? The girl responds. He looks at her, waiting for her reaction. The warrior holds a cubic object, about to throw it. She throws it towards the opponent without knowing its real power. The item made before the spirits were extinguished retains everything done within it. The protagonist can't believe what she did. A message says that the Curse-Bee kit has been activated, and the character's appearance will change for 24 hours. The pink spirit is showing interest in you. The protagonist takes on a pink, bald form, becoming extremely irritated by what happened as the message keeps repeating as the transformation occurs. The warrior who threw the object shouts, "Good riddance," at the Madongwang enemy, wishing for his death while running away. The protagonist feels a desire to follow her, but she didn't cause any harm, so he can't just kill her for that. The random Curse-Bee kit prevented him from going to the northern continent, passing through the beginner villages, and he knows that if seen on the internet like this, he will be the center of attention. Someone appears and calls out Eojin's name. He recognizes the voice as Drake's and before greeting him, notices that Drake has also been transformed. Drake starts laughing at the protagonist's strange appearance, but he replies that Drake is in no position to judge since he's also been transformed. He mentions that earlier a girl with pink hair threw the random kit at him, and then left, asking if she was from some NPC event. Drake asks what he did to get the death threat and assassination request, and he responds that it's a long story. The protagonist, wanting to retaliate, thinks that the request to kill Visido is different from the assassination that occurs when players gather to use a sandworm as bait. The level of those players must be close to 20 at most, he thinks. The best way to handle this is to have many people on his side, focusing on new large groups. A strangely reserved group suddenly appeared, consisting of high-level new players. Not long after, he managed to find a new suspicious guild. Its name was Magio. What the hell is Magio? Some kind of martial arts RPG? He wonders. Upon doing more detailed research, he discovered the full name of what was hidden. It was Ma Dongwang Amagyo, a guild dedicated to Madongwang with the goal of killing its enemy, Visido. Talking with his friend Drake, the protagonist comes to the conclusion. They're going to kill me because they love me. A strange paradox. All I did was fight with myself. Drake says it might be difficult to do raids this way and that the effect only lasts 24 hours, so he plans to log out of the game. There's no need for that, he says. I just had a great idea. Let's start moving without wasting any more time. I'll show you something fun, the protagonist concludes. Someone with their hand raised shouts that the Lance of Justice should strike Visido, who killed Madongwang, followed by others shouting, "Let's get Visido! Let's get our revenge!" Other shouts say, "Grab the weapons as soon as you see someone pink. Our main enemy is pink. Kill Visido." Hearing this, the protagonist, who is at the north wall of the beginner's village, concludes that they are determined to kill him. He thinks it will be difficult to find a disguise being bald, pink, and naked, concluding that even his Madong disguise won't help him get past the walls. To reach the northern continent, he needs to pass through the beginner's village on the central continent, but currently, the cultist guild controls the gate. Alright, let's go with the plan, the protagonist says. He summons his Jormungand. The summoning of the serpent is noticeable at the top of the wall. Some guards on patrol are startled by its presence. The protagonist manages to injure one of the guards, and the bloodstain spreads in several directions. Realizing his presence, everyone shouts his name, alerting the others. He's here. I can't believe he took down two immediately. The protagonist simply stares at them with a fearsome look. One of the guild members asks if the protagonist thinks they are few, saying they will finish him off. Two warriors charge at him, threatening him with fury, but he defends against the attacks and manages to counterattack, taking one of them down and slicing through all the others around. A guild member says that even the city guards, who were NPCs, were attacked, mentioning that Visido is truly insane. It seems he will never buy potions or sell equipment again, and won't be able to repair items, showing that he doesn't care about being treated as a monster. What kind of idiot is he? Someone asks, observing him with a fearful look. A warrior holds a type of grenade and prepares to use it. She shouts the guild's name and raises her hand high. A beam of light rises into the sky and is seen from afar. The warrior then says it's a matter of time before he dies, and if they call in reinforcements, more than 2,000 players will arrive. With a smile on her face, she says that the protagonist will die. Then she notices something that catches her attention and averts her gaze. We can see in the sky that several beams of light have been lit. All the local security groups need reinforcements. She is shocked as she didn't expect something like this, and the groups shout, calling for help. When she returns her gaze to the protagonist, he is about to attack her. We see the first security group requesting reinforcements. The second group finds the enemy, about to be exterminated. The third security group spots the target at the location of the fourth group, unable to determine which one is the real one. The fifth security group has just been attacked. Its members are all eliminated by the protagonist. Seeing the battle scenario, one of the members is stunned. Apparently, it was the leader, asking what is happening. She hits the target with her axe and defeats it. One of the enemy's hands trembles in pain, but then its true form is revealed as a copycat shadow. What are these things? Dehi asks. Are they monsters that look like Visiado? Some groups nearby are asking for help, requesting reinforcements as they were destroyed. The girl's brother says he thinks the Visiados in regions 1 and 13 escaped. He is also in the battle, monitoring the regions. He says that region 1 went east and the other went north. Reinforcements arrived, helping to kill the remaining ones, but it caused a lot of damage. The girl says that the front and rear lines failed to encircle them and ended up giving them an opening. She orders the forces to split into 2 groups, 500 to the east and the other half to the north, with her leading. He was hunting while heading north. I'll do the same since he attacked the northern gates. I never give up. I'll make you pay for Madong's death, she says. We see the empty courtyard outside. The two discuss the duplicates. Drake knows from the protagonist that he did the same in his other fight, and says that thanks to this, the enemies lost half of their forces. We are transported back to before the fight, and we see that the protagonist went to the Dorian Grave Forest and captured 12 lookalikes. Just before they noticed and changed form, Jormungandr swallowed them and trapped them in its stomach. Its special Devour ability keeps enemies alive for a period of time but unable to regenerate or use their abilities. Later, Jormungandr released them in front of him, creating the 12 clones, resulting in 13 Visiados, allowing him to enter and exit the fight unnoticed. Knowing Dehi, the protagonist hurries, as he knows she must already be after him with her group. Drake wants to ask the protagonist something. He stops to listen to what Drake says. Drake says he knows they're heading north but doesn't like traveling without knowing the reason. Even so, he agreed to visit the unexplored continent due to the dangerous monsters. When questioned about his objectives, the protagonist says that it is not his destination, just a checkpoint. Drake is left speechless upon hearing the answer, but he changes his demeanor when he hears the word cataclysm. The protagonist says it's not just about exploring an unknown region but causing a cataclysm and turning the game upside down. And to cause this massive update, he needs to reach the northern continent. Drake seems impressed with the plan, then both react the same way, bursting into laughter as they realize they're two bald, pink guys talking about something serious. Drake thanks him for the unexpected response and says he won't stop him, getting excited about the idea. The protagonist smiles, as he expected this response. The two then set off towards their goal, with the protagonist saying that once they reach the continent, the 24 hours will be up. Dehi is with her group, excited as they are finally starting a raid on the northern continent, something never seen before. They depart from the central continent and then the northern continent, heading towards the harsh snow-capped mountains. But amidst the mountains and snow is the silhouette of a mysterious being, vanishing among the surrounding snow. A message from the game says, "You have entered the Frozen Vale. The name of the first visitor will be written in the Akashic records." The blizzard worsens, and the player's maximum HP will be reduced by 1% every second. The protagonist and his friend find the mysterious creature, a monster with traits of tree, poison, ice, and confusion. Its ability is called Frozen Veil. He notices that the creature's HP is between the torso and the limbs, suggesting it's better to focus on one part at a time. Drake says he will deal with the annoying arms, and the protagonist will take the left leg. He tells Drake to use the creature's sap on his body to resist the snow and, when asked about the poison damage, says mathematically that the damage is quite low. The snowy mountain is the symbol of the north, with snow and ice typography, as well as a blizzard that reduces HP, making raids in the area known as impossible. The protagonist says that the duration of the blizzard is random, lasting from a minute to several days, making it seem like the real world. Drake adds, based on the blizzard pattern, the protagonist predicts it will last longer, suggesting using the sap as defense since they cannot wait for the blizzard to pass to continue. Drake asks more about this pattern. The protagonist says that the movement of the snowflakes is simple and that he can count how many there are, recognizing the pattern, making Drake realize how attentive he is. "We're at the entrance," says the protagonist. He warns that the monsters will get tougher from here on and that even though the previous monster was strong, it was the least threatening of them all. He adds that there is something even more terrifying ahead, saying he hopes to avoid encountering it if possible. Drake notices that it's the first time the protagonist shows fear, wondering what he meant by that. He tries to deduce what it could be, and the game issues a message saying they have entered the territory of someone called the Frozen Chief, who is awake and displeased with the intruders. "What is this, a boss?" he asks. A message indicates that the Frozen Chief recommends they leave. Then, once again, we see the silhouette of a being amid the blizzard. The protagonist exclaims, asking if the being has found them. Drake then looks ahead, trying to see something. The silhouette intensifies in the snow and slowly approaches the two. Drake calmly asks the protagonist what it is. The protagonist, screaming in terror, says they need to flee before it catches them. The creature moves through the snow, seemingly skittish. Then an avalanche happens. The creature reveals itself. Its name is Ahihi. It has traits of ice, darkness, undead, and pursuer, inhabiting the harsh snow-capped mountains, and measures 2 meters in length. It charges at Drake, who is startled by its presence. He begins to scream in desperation with the creature in front of him, but manages to grab one of his daggers, and tries to strike the enemy, who dodges. The creature manages to grab him by the foot, and immediately freezes him from top to bottom. Drake realizes what the creature is doing, and tries to shoot it with his crossbow, but he feels his body freezing until he is completely immobilized. The creature approaches and stares at him, licking his face. Despite being frozen, Drake is conscious and feels disgusted by the situation. Apparently, something moves quickly in the snow. It was the protagonist arriving at Drake. He places his hand on his friend. Drake thaws, asking what happened. The protagonist explains it's like a game of tag. The pursuer freezes the opponent, who is freed when touched by a companion. He concludes that if a person is frozen and no one touches them, they will have to wait for the blizzard damage to kill them. The protagonist is surprised by the creature appearing behind him out of nowhere, touching his shoulder. Drake tries to help by shooting a dart from his crossbow. The protagonist, now frozen, can only see the darts passing in front of him. He then starts to thaw when hit by a dart. He says that arrows and magic are also considered touches and that no damage is received when frozen. Praising Drake for figuring this out, Drake simply agrees. The protagonist says that's why he can't go there alone. Not expecting to hear that laugh again, Drake suggests that the two of them could kill the creature, saying it's easy if they just watch their hands. The protagonist says that once they're targeted, they will be hunted until the end. He asserts that even if they kill the creature, and before concluding, he reflects on whether it is really necessary to kill the creature. Come to think of it, how far are those Magio lunatics? He says, and Drake realizes the protagonist is preparing another crazy scheme. We see that the guild members are in trouble, fighting against frozen wolves, beastly creatures that inhabit the mountains. Dehi attacks one of the wolves with her axe, chopping it into pieces. The brother asks her why the creatures are so strong. She responds that they are irritating, attack, and run away when satisfied. A guild fighter sees a penguin among them, and approaches, finding it cute, when she is caught off guard. The penguin has blades on its body and demonic traits, using its appearance and charm as a disguise. It charges at Dehi, attacking her with its blades. She also attacks it with her axe. Looking at it, Dehi says it seems weak but it's hard to deal with, as more than 100 people from the group have died to a single penguin. It leaps towards her again with its 2 sharp blades. Dehi is caught off guard and surprised by the attack. Someone in the snow calls out to her, saying the group was following them properly. She looks towards the voice speaking to her, and upon recognizing Visiado, she screams his name. Furious, she prepares an attack, and with all her strength throws the axe, splitting the penguin in half, telling it to get out of there. The axe is thrown with such force that it pierces the penguin and continues, until it reaches the frozen chief, who remains frozen and takes no damage. He ironically praises the girl's strike. Furious, she stares at him, trying to understand the situation. The frozen chief has been hit and is thawed. He thanks the girl for hitting him and prepares to retaliate. She doesn't understand and is sure she delivered a precise blow. She hears a strange sound and looks up. The other members are shivering as they also hear the noise, when suddenly, the creature Ahihi appears, speeding towards them. Our video ends here. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.